In an unexpected twist of fate, one question looms large: how did a superpower find itself at the mercy of foreign influence? When Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine, Vladimir Putin was convinced that his military operation would swiftly secure victory. Days turned into an arduous struggle, and as the dust settled, it became clear that the sheer size of Russia's military alone was insufficient. The need for foreign allies became glaringly apparent. Russia found itself shackled by debts owed to its partners, a situation that spiraled into a crisis Putin never foresaw. With every passing moment, Russia's Far East, an expansive region rich in resources, slips further under the control of Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un. According to an article published by Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service on October 16, this control is quietly but systematically taking shape. In his desperation to sustain the war effort in Ukraine, Putin is extending offers that betray the very sovereignty of his nation. The irony? In a bid to attract foreign investment, he's relinquishing territory instead of consolidating power. The analysis reveals a troubling reality: Putin has become so eager to maintain his alliances that he's inadvertently paving the way for external dominion over significant parts of his own land. Crucial investments are flooding in from China, with forecasts predicting that by the end of 2025, Chinese investments in the Far East might soar to a staggering trillion rubles, approximately $12.6 billion. This monetary firepower comes with an ulterior motive. China's crafty financial strategy aims to secure influence under the guise of support. While Russia believes it is negotiating advantageous terms, history shows that such investments rarely come without strings attached. The Belt and Road Initiative serves as an archetype of how investment can act as a veiled form of control. As China deepens its economic foothold, Senator Viktor Kalashnikov from the Khabarovsk region highlights a stark statistic: Russian-Chinese trade soared, with a 5.5 million ton increase in 2024 alone, escalating another 36% in the first half of 2025. It begs the question: who is truly benefiting from this economic partnership? In a move seemingly strategic, China diversifies its approach, ensuring that relationships are based on trade rather than overt loans, crafting a dependency that could potentially hand over regional control without ever firing a shot. What unfolds here is both a cunning maneuver and a creeping loss of Russian sovereignty, as China plants its roots deeper into Russia's economic fabric. And then there's North Korea, which has seized an unexpected opportunity amid this geopolitical upheaval. Reports indicate that thousands of North Korean laborers, initially estimated at 15,000 but likely closer to 50,000, have been sent to work in the Far East. The conditions these workers face are harrowing, described by escapees as slave-like, where long hours under dangerous conditions are the norm. To Putin, these workers are simply cheap labor, but to Kim Jong-un, this arrangement represents a foothold in the region. With labor demands swelling alongside unpaid debts, how long can Putin sustain this arrangement? Reports claim North Korea could be banking up to $500 million annually from these workers while striking contracts for an additional 153,000 laborers. But as Moscow fumbles to fulfill its debts, the looming specter of economic calamity raises more questions than it answers. Is Putin simply bartering away his nation's future? The stakes have never been higher, and the political landscape could shift dramatically with every decision made. What happens when the fabric of a nation begins to unravel at the hands of those it once considered allies? As the shadows deepen around Russia's Far East, the urgency grows. Will Putin continue to play a game with such high stakes, or has he already lost too much to turn back? The answers lie not just in foreign relations, but in the very heart of national identity and sovereignty. In the shadows of a fierce power struggle, China's ambitions are intricately woven into Russia's Far East, like a spider spinning a web. With projections suggesting that Chinese investments in this region could soar to a staggering trillion rubles, approximately $12.6 billion, it's evident that China is not merely offering support, it's tightening its grip. Russia, seduced by the promise of quick gains, fails to recognize the subtle menace. Is it truly a good deal, or is it just the deceptive allure of foreign investments masked in benevolence? As part of its sweeping Belt and Road Initiative, China has masterfully engineered a pathway of dependency through strategic investments. Recent reports indicate that China stands to gain as much as $22 billion from loan repayments made by the world's least developed countries. This seemingly altruistic act holds nations in a vice grip of debt, forcing them to bend to China's will. A strategy akin to that of a shadowy loan shark, where favors and finances entwine, leaving the recipient vulnerable and under control. In Russia's Far East, however, the audacity of this plan reveals an unexpected twist: China isn't following its usual script. Instead of flooding the region with massive infrastructure projects, China is skillfully shifting its playbook. The Khabarovsk region, emblematic of this strategy, has experienced a remarkable increase in trade, 5.5 million tons more in 2024 alone. By mid-2025, this grew by an astonishing 36%. Could it be that China is deliberately crafting a dependence on trade, positioning itself as the indispensable partner? Every rising figure shouts one unmistakable truth: these aren't mere fluctuations, they are calculated movements designed to accelerate China's influence in the region. The once lauded investment strategy is now giving way to a subtle mastery of trade dynamics. With China holding the aces, it's only a matter of time before the balance of power shifts. Would Russia dare refuse such entanglements, knowing the economic peril that lies in its wake? The stakes could not be higher, and the looming question remains: what happens when Khabarovsk becomes entirely reliant on China for its economic sustenance? As the web tightens, the territory that once thrived under Russian banners is gradually falling under foreign dominion. China's approach is sharp and insidious. With trade as its weapon, it quietly nurtures a growing dependency, setting the stage for greater control. The Far East, far from being a steadfast Russian stronghold, may soon slip into the shadows of another nation's ambitions. Will Russia awaken in time to reverse this descent, or will it be too late? The answers lie in the intertwining of economic leverage and geopolitical maneuvering, a dangerous game that is redefining allegiances. While Chinese influence in Russia's Far East continues to spread, the region risks transforming into something unrecognizable. Special economic zones, established under different regulations, are gradually falling under Beijing's sway. Russian lands are morphing into territories that, while geographically within Russia, increasingly bear the imprint of another nation's governance. Could it be that with every passing day, Putin is surrendering control of these crucial regions? Now, imagine the implications. Putin remains hesitant to reclaim these territories. Could he really risk angering President Xi, especially knowing that he might have to expel 2 million Chinese citizens? What would happen to his political standing if he chooses to act against such a powerful ally? All the while, the presence of Chinese engineers quietly advances under the radar. They're aiding Russian drone manufacturers amid a substantial surge in drone warfare against Ukraine, launching thousands of strikes each month. With every drone constructed, Xi's power tightens around Putin's grasp. Meanwhile, the specter of North Korean labor infiltrates the Far East too. The official tally of 15,000 North Korean workers is likely just the tip of the iceberg, with estimates skyrocketing to as much as 50,000. Under dire circumstances resembling slave labor, these workers face harrowing shifts, subjected to brutal conditions. Their suffering underscores the depth of Russia's desperation as it leans on questionable alliances. While these workers toil, what benefits has Kim Jong-un extracted? Approximately $500 million flows into North Korea's coffers every year from this arrangement, with looming contracts for even more labor looming in the shadows. As Putin grapples with his war debts and dwindling resources, the question hangs heavy in the air: can he afford to keep seeking dependence on allies who are increasingly exploiting him? Amid this web of geopolitical manipulation, what surprises await as the true nature of these alliances begins to unravel? The precarious balance teeters, hinting at a future where loyalty may be worth less than land itself. Each decision could alter the very landscape of power in Eurasia. What will happen when the hands that feed become the hands that grasp? In the shadows of conflict, a new and chilling reality is unfolding in Russia's Far East. Here lies a tale of desperation and manipulation, where the ambitions of leaders entwine, leading to an unexpected and unsettling transformation of Russia's vast territory. Shocking fact: did you know that nearly 50,000 North Korean workers are now toiling in this region under brutal conditions? The story begins with a pressing crisis. Russia has opened its doors wide to North Korean laborers, officially noting around 15,000 arrivals, but estimates soar to a staggering 50,000. In August, this number was echoed in a report that revealed the grim reality these workers face. Imagine a world where workers toil under oppressive circumstances, laboring late into the night without safety equipment, often exhausted to the point of near collapse, and facing harsh punishment from supervisors. One escapee, Chan, painted a harrowing picture of their plight, stating, "It was truly like we were dying." Vladimir Putin views this influx as a practical solution: cheap labor from an ally. However, beneath this facade lies a dark scheme. North Korea is not merely exporting workers, it is positioning itself to gain influence in the Far East, strategically following China's model of economic domination. While Russia is oblivious to the long-term consequences, Kim Jong-un is cashing in, pocketing around $500 million annually. This amount astonishingly equates to approximately $1.5 billion if calculated with the unofficial number of workers. The stakes grow even higher. Russian companies have issued contracts for an additional 153,000 North Korean laborers, raising the question, does Putin have the financial resources amidst the raging costs of war in Ukraine? With mounting pressures, the outlook for control over this territory weakens further. As Putin trades access for labor, he risks losing more than his grip on power. Tension thickens as the fear of losing sovereign territory looms. Will Russia yield to a future where North Korean influence becomes firmly entrenched? With the precarious balance in play, one must wonder, can Putin reclaim his territory before it slips entirely from his grasp? The clock is ticking, and every choice can lead to a seismic shift in power dynamics. Can Vladimir Putin bargain away Russia's treasure trove of land to fund his endless war? A shocking exposé reveals how North Korea's laborers are planting flags in the Far East, while China looms, ready to claim victory. What happens when desperation turns to territory theft? In the shadow of Ukraine's invasion, Russia's Far East teeters on the edge of foreign domination. Putin once dreamed of swift triumph, confident in his military might. But reality shattered those illusions. Now, reliant on allies like China and North Korea, he's trading land for aid, slipping from control in ways he never foresaw. The Far East, vast and untamed, faces creeping takeover through investments, immigrants, and workers. Bills mount, debts deepen, and Putin's grip weakens, exposing a contraction that could redefine Russia's borders forever. North Korea looms as a silent conqueror, wielding worker contracts like hidden weapons. Can you feel the icy grip? Those laborers toil in sweat-drenched camps, under the crack of overseers' whips, hearts pounding from fear and exhaustion. Russia, blind to the peril, praises them as steadfast even under threats for those grueling 18-hour shifts, shadows lengthening as darkness falls without relief. In a twist of betrayal, tale-telling lawmakers hail these men as superior to local migrants, pledging 153,000 new deals. Is Putin asleep at the wheel, or does he not care? This deadly gamble tosses the Far East into jeopardy, where every contract whispers of North Korea's ambitious grasp, and the chill of undying servitude lingers like frost on unguarded souls. Building on that treacherous workforce invasion, the stakes soar higher in a web of peril. Intense rivalries erupt as China clashes with North Korea over overlapping claims, clashing ambitions, no match for Russia's feeble stand. Sensory shocks abound, the acrid stench of unyielding toil, the gritty scrape of worn boots on barren earth, the hush of powerless negotiations. Why is Moscow silent amid these raids? Putin dares not disrupt the flow of drone tech from China's bustling engineers, their hands crafting the deadly aerial swarms pounding Ukraine relentlessly. Fear the irony, every drone's buzz conceals the sting of loss. Will Russia awaken, or spiral into this void? Humiliation mounts as foreign plots engulf 40% of Russian soil, nearly 7 million square kilometers, home to 7.9 million souls, morphing into puppet realms. Vivid betrayal unfolds, the oppressive weight of debt pressing like a vice, air thick with alliance fumes, the dreaded echo of territorial theft. Ukraine's intelligence unveils it all, strategic outposts erased, turning fields of promise into battlegrounds. Imagine the ruble-thin war chest bleeding dry. Could expansion westward birth eastern collapse? Twists unfold in relentless contraction, where Putin's empire threatens to crumble, not conquer. What desperate bargains hide in the whispers of defeat? An emotional cascade of pride eroded, hopes dashed, Russia teeters, a colossal shadow shrinking in futile defiance. As dusk fell over the Russian Far East, a sinister game unfolded, a melodic clash of ambition and despair. When Vladimir Putin initiated his so-called special military operation in Ukraine, he thought it would be a swift success, a mere blip in time. But as days turned into months, the resilience of Ukraine shattered that delusion. With his initial hope abandoned, Putin turned to the might of Russia's military, yet that too failed to deliver. The harsh truth? Russia now leans heavily on foreign allies, China and North Korea, to revive its faltering dream. Imagine a vast region, rich in resources and potential, slipping through fingers like grains of sand. Recent intelligence reveals that Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un are not simply observers, they are players, methodically tightening their grip on Russia's vulnerable territories. With every economic venture and labor agreement, Putin edges closer to the precipice of relinquishing control. Like a creeping vine consuming an ancient tree, China's investments in this region are set to spiral, to the tune of nearly 1 trillion rubles by 2025. It's not charity, it's strategy. While Russia believes it's striking a deal, China cunningly utilizes this opportunity to cultivate influence. The Belt and Road Initiative is merely the tip of the iceberg, a facade covering a more sinister intent, binding nations to its financial will. The stakes rise further when considering North Korea, which has begun pouring laborers into Russia's Far East, allegedly under appalling conditions. Reports suggest that up to 50,000 North Koreans toil in what can only be described as modern-day servitude. Amidst the clattering of machinery and whispers of desperation, Kim Jong-un smiles, pocketing the profits while providing the manpower Russia desperately needs. But there's a chilling twist in this unfolding drama. As Putin furthers his reliance on these rogue allies, he unwittingly sets the stage for a monumental irony. As he seeks to expand Russia's influence westward, he may be losing his grip on the East. With a declining population and the clash of global dynamics, the Far East may soon become a pawn in a game he no longer controls, leaning into a reality of contraction rather than expansion. This narrative raises urgent questions. How long before Putin realizes the precarious game he's playing? What will remain of Russian sovereignty as its landscape transforms under foreign intervention? The unfolding saga captures the essence of a nation on the brink, trying desperately to hold on to what remains before it slips entirely into the shadows cast by its neighbors. As the swirling chaos of war envelopes Ukraine, a chilling reality unfolds for Russia under the weight of Vladimir Putin's ambitions. When the invasion began, Putin envisioned a swift victory, confidently projecting that his military might would crush resistance in mere days. Yet the truth proved startlingly different. Now, as the grim fog of war drags on, the colossal weight of Russia's military is revealed to be insufficient. Increasingly, Putin finds himself desperately relying on foreign allies, forging precarious bonds with nations like China and North Korea to sustain his war effort. This unanticipated reliance might cost him everything. Imagine a vast expanse, rich in resources, now falling out of Russia's grasp, like sand slipping through fingers. Ukraine's foreign intelligence has painted a bleak picture, indicating that China's reach grows ever stronger in Russia's Far East. By 2025, investments could soar to a staggering 1 trillion rubles, approximately $12.6 billion, as China secures its foothold through strategic maneuvering, overshadowing anything Russia could offer. The question lingers, is Putin unwittingly signing away pieces of his country's future? What once belonged wholly to Russia now teeters on the edge of external control. Beijing's ambitions reflect a master plan that extends beyond mere investments, as the nation cleverly entangles Russia in dire dependencies. With trade ballooning, an astonishing 36% increase noted just this year alone, China is adopting a slow but effective strategy. It's turning Khabarovsk into a vital economic reliance on Chinese goods and services. Should Russia falter in this arrangement, it risks losing not just trade, but its economic sovereignty as well. All the while, North Korea lurks like a shadowy predator, seizing opportunities amid Russia's vulnerabilities. As reports circulate that up to 50,000 North Korean workers now toil in Russia, some alleged to be under slave-like conditions, the implication becomes clear: Putin's desperate need for labor is propelling North Korea into a position of power over Russia's provinces. As the clock ticks, one pressing question remains: is Russia truly willing to sacrifice its integrity for the sake of temporary stability? What if the story doesn't end there? What if the very land Russia once viewed as fertile turns into a pawn in a game of geopolitical chess, a game where Putin could unwittingly usher in the downfall of his entire empire? As supplies dwindle and pressures mount, the stakes become clearer. Crucial components for Russia's drone warfare, essential for maintaining its military objectives, now predominantly run through China. Picture the irony, needing the very nation he seeks to dominate to bolster his failing campaign. Putin wanted control, yet now finds himself at the mercy of his own decisions. The vast territories he sought to safeguard may slip into foreign hands forever, a staggering potential loss of 40%. And as speculation mounts about the enduring ramifications of these alliances, the question arises: can Russia ever wrest back its autonomy? The answer becomes murkier with every passing day as alliances solidify and dependencies deepen, leaving Russia's fate precariously hanging in the balance. In a gripping tale of military ambitions gone awry, Russia's quest for dominance faces unexpected consequences. When Russia invaded Ukraine, Vladimir Putin believed he could quickly assert control. However, 3.5 years in, only 20% of Ukraine had fallen under Russian influence, leaving a daunting 80% still standing against him. Yet the geopolitical chessboard is shifting beneath his feet, with foreign allies playing a crucial role in Russia's deteriorating predicament. The situation grew dire as Moscow faltered in its mechanized assaults. Summer saw attempts to infiltrate troops into the vital logistical hub of Pokrovsk. With armored vehicles now deployed, assaults led to nothing but burning tanks and desolation. On October 16, the Azov National Guard sprung a ferocious trap, obliterating a Russian battalion in a deadly ambush. Using cunning tactics, Ukraine anticipated this mechanized attack, targeting key positions like Shkova, while Russian T-90M battle tanks met ruthless destruction. But as Russia suffocated, an insidious power shift occurred in the Far East. China and North Korea, lurking in the shadows, are gradually tightening their grip on lucrative territories. According to Ukraine's foreign intelligence, China's investments in the region could soar to $12.6 billion by 2025. This isn't charity, it's a calculated strategy to tighten the noose around Russia's economic future. Are these investments merely sowing seeds of dependency, or are they leading to something more sinister? Simultaneously, North Korea's influx of laborers into Russia's Far East escalates the stakes. With reports indicating slave-like conditions for the workers, this strategy could be a blueprint for North Korea to leverage its presence effectively. Put simply, as Russia seeks resources and manpower, it unwittingly allows its sovereignty to slip into foreign hands. What happens now? Can Putin stem the tide of destiny turning against him, or has he become a pawn in a game far larger than he ever anticipated? As the battle for Ukraine rages on, whispers of an alarming transformation in the Far East grow louder. Will Putin's miscalculations doom not just his military campaign, but the integrity of Russia itself? Keep watching, the next chapter of this unfolding drama might bring an unexpected twist. In the chaotic theater of war, a new chapter unfolded. Ukraine stood firm against the backdrop of a relentless Russian onslaught. As tanks clanged and the ground trembled under heavy armor, one force emerged as a beacon of resilience, the Azov National Guard. Their deployment in the Pokrovsk region painted a vivid picture of courage as they battled for territory under siege, defending against a determined enemy. On the crisp morning of October 16, the rumble of 22 armored vehicles pierced the dawn. Reports from the Azov National Guard detailed a strategic Russian assault that had gathered strength over weeks. A formidable column of 11 tanks and armored combat vehicles set out from the tranquil settlement of Melanivka, dramatically underlining Russia's commitment to reclaim lost ground. But this was not a mere show of force, it was a tactical maneuver crafted to encircle the strategic position of Chicago. In a move that suggested a well-laid plan, the Russians divided their forces to attack from multiple angles, revealing an unsettling adaptability since their previous struggles. If allowed to press forward unchallenged, the outcome might have tipped in their favor. Yet, the Azov National Guard stood as the steadfast bulwark against potential disaster. They faced hurdles that could easily have derailed their efforts. Intelligence showed that Russia came armed with lessons learned, setting up observation posts to counter Ukraine's drone patrols, one of the country's vital lines of defense. The sophisticated Russian tactics aimed to neutralize drones that had become instrumental in monitoring and safeguarding against enemy advances. In stark contrast, the heart of conflict echoed with the question, would Ukraine manage to hinder this relentless push before it was too late? As the sun rose higher, a tense atmosphere shrouded the battlefield, and the stakes couldn't be more perilous. Would the Azov National Guard's resolve be enough to thwart the formidable Russian strategy? As they steeled themselves for the impending assault, the air crackled with anticipation, both sides bracing for what could be a decisive clash in this high-stakes theater of war. In a dramatic backdrop of conflict, Russia's invasion of Ukraine has taken many unexpected turns. When the assault began, Vladimir Putin was convinced his special military operation would culminate in swift success. Time, however, has proven him woefully mistaken. As the days stretched into months, a harrowing realization dawned: sheer military might was not enough. Now, burdened by staggering debts to foreign allies, Putin finds himself in a precarious position, forced to barter away not just funds but territorial influence. Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service has recently shed light on a troubling trend in Russia's Far East. According to their findings, China and North Korea are subtly encroaching upon crucial regions, exploiting Russia's vulnerabilities, and tightening their grip on this vast territory. The report reveals that Putin's dire financial state is compelling him to cede territory in exchange for support. Instead of merely offering cash, he is supposedly trading land. The Far East is on the verge of slipping further into the hands of foreign powers, and the repercussions may be dire. Consider China's relentless pursuit for dominance in this region. Financial investment from China into Russia's Far East could soar to a staggering trillion rubles by the close of 2025. This staggering figure, equivalent to a jaw-dropping $12 billion, reflects a calculated effort to deepen China's influence by fostering dependency through trade and economic control. Surprisingly, the infrastructure projects, usually a hallmark of such investments, are conspicuously absent. Instead, China has focused its efforts on enhancing trade volumes, which soared by 36% in just the first half of 2025. Meanwhile, North Korea is not merely a bystander in this geopolitical theater. The inflow of North Korean workers into Russia's Far East presents a chilling picture. Reports suggest that around 50,000 laborers are working under what can only be described as slave-like conditions. As they toil away, the North Korean regime reaps significant profits, with Kim Jong-un pocketing upwards of $500 million annually from the arrangement. The Kremlin, in desperate need of manpower for development projects, appears to be unwittingly handing over control of its own territory, resulting in a precarious balance of power. But what does all of this mean for the future of Russia? As China strengthens its foothold and North Korea capitalizes on its labor force, Putin's grip on his vast empire is threatening to unravel. These foreign influences present a dilemma: sustain territorial integrity or yield to pressure for economic survival. Time is running out for Putin. He finds himself cornered by these developments, forced to confront choices that could forever change the map of Russia. As tensions rise and loyalties shift, one question looms: how much longer can Putin hold on to his power, and at what cost? In a chilling twist of fate, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has spiraled into an unexpected battleground of desperation and shifting alliances. Vladimir Putin boldly imagined a swift victory, hoping that his military might would easily overpower Ukrainian resistance. But as the days turned to months, that arrogance crumbled. Now, as Ukraine's foreign intelligence reveals, Putin clings to foreign partnerships for survival, particularly as China's influence seeps deeper into Russia's Far East. Imagine a vast landscape where once proud Russian flags flutter weakly, soon to be overshadowed by the looming presence of Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un. As reported recently, the mysterious tides of power have begun to shift, and Putin has unwittingly started to sacrifice his territories to pay off his allies. It's a staggering revelation: Russia may be trading land for support in a strategy that baffles observers. With China's investments in the Far East projected to hit an astonishing $12.6 billion by 2025, what's unfolding is not merely a financial investment but a subtle takeover. As the clang of metal and echo of trade agreements resound, the intricate web of influence becomes clear. In Khabarovsk, trade between Russia and China skyrocketed by 36% in just the first half of 2025. What does this rapid escalation mean for Russia's sovereignty? By integrating Chinese norms into special economic zones, Beijing is tightening its grip through what resembles a slow invasion, a quiet colonization that goes unnoticed amidst the chaos of war. North Korea, too, capitalizes on Russia's desperation. Thousands of workers flock to the Far East under perilous conditions, effectively operating in labor camps that are deemed slave-like. Each worker becomes a pawn, enhancing Kim Jong-un's leverage as he pockets millions while Moscow suffers. Yet, amidst these grim realities, the heart of the conflict continues to pulse. On the front lines, Ukraine's 82nd Air Assault Brigade showcases resilience through the lens of drones capturing stark images of destruction. FPV drones dive and strike swiftly, turning Russian tanks into flaming wreckage. The footage resonates with a powerful truth: in Dobropilia, the stakes are high, and the message to Moscow is unambiguous. The fight isn't merely for land, it's for survival and sovereignty. What lies ahead is uncertain. As Russia continues to grapple with its losses, 16 armored vehicles destroyed in just one day, the question hangs in the air: will the Kremlin unleash further mechanized assaults, or has the tide turned irreversibly against Putin's ambitions? The coming days hold the answer, but one thing is clearer than ever: Ukraine's tenacity is proving formidable in this high-stakes game of geopolitics, and the world watches as the chess pieces hover on the board, ready for the next move. On October 13, Russian forces charged disastrously into Ukraine's relentless defenses, losing a staggering 16 heavy armored vehicles in the process. BMPs rumbling like doomed beasts, MTLBs crunching under fire, and tanks exploding in plumes of acrid smoke that choked the air. These losses piled atop the 9 armored pieces wiped out just 3 days later, swelling the total carnage to 25 vehicles. Imagine the bitter humiliation. Putin's prized armor fleet, meant to crush Crimea, now reduced to twisted wreckage on the blood-soaked grounds of Ukraine. And the human cost? A chilling 78 Russian soldiers vanished into that October 13 assault, their screams echoing through the fog of war. Did they die pinned in their burning shells, or vanish without trace? We don't know the full toll from the October 16 chaos yet, as Ukraine's National Guard tallies the survivors versus the silent dead. Yet those 78 lives already paint a brutal picture of Russia's agonizing Dobropysha campaign, bleeding its manpower dry in futile sacrifices. What if I told you Ukraine's defenders are turning each battle into a graveyard for Moscow's ambitions, racketing up irrecoverable wounds that haunt Putin's dreams? Picture Vladimir Zelensky stepping into the spotlight, his voice steady but laced with fire in that Facebook reel. He lays bare the horror. In our Dobropysha counteroffensive alone, Russia's overall losses now scream past 3,000 souls, most beyond recovery. Irrecoverable, a word that stings like salt in open wounds, for soldiers tossed away like pawns in a reckless gamble. Zelensky adds, "This is where the Russians dreamed of smashing through for a breakthrough, but our forces neutralized them completely. Can you feel the tremor? Russia has clawed at Dobropysha for what feels like an eternity, pouring troops into its jaws without a whisper of capture. Losing 3,000 in this small inferno? It's not just defeat. It's a slap to Putin's arrogance, exposing how little he values the lives hurled into the meat grinder. And yet, even on October 16, Moscow avoided a full frontal charge, or so it tried. But failure's cold shadow loomed, as its forces slammed headlong into walls of resistance once more. What twisted strategy hides beneath this? A desperate bid to avoid the obvious, only to crash again. Is this the unraveling of Putin's grand facade, where every failed thrust erodes his grip on power? As losses mount and men fall silent, one question burns: will Russia's bloody reckoning in Dobropysha shatter the illusion of victory entirely? Or is another brutal twist lurking, ready to tighten the noose? What will they unleash next, if even their clever maneuvers end in ash? The air thickens with unanswered dread, as Ukraine's unbreakable will presses on, and Putin's empire teeters on a razor's edge, in a battlefield where every heartbeat could be the final one. Imagine this, a sprawling Ukrainian city under relentless pressure, its streets echoing with distant rumbles, the acrid smell of dust hanging in the air after each clash. But wait, has Russia's massive push really stalled, leaving Putin staring at empty gains? Shocking fact, despite pouring in over 110,000 troops, Russian forces are bleeding 35,000 lives monthly near Pokrovsk alone. Could this be the turning point where Ukraine's defenses crush the invasion dream? 347 characters, to recap what we've covered so far. Russia's forces surged forward with multi-month attacks, snatching bits of land near Pokrovsk. Yet Ukraine struck back fiercely, reclaiming key villages Russia had grabbed briefly. The harsh truth? Moscow remains miles from victory in that vital spot. Now, picture the frustration building in the Kremlin's halls. Russia's advance hasn't budged an inch since kicking off that bold offensive, one meant to shatter Ukraine's hold on the city by late August. Why does Putin crave Pokrovsk so badly? Without it crumbling, his dream of swallowing all of Donetsk slips further away. Ever wonder what makes this place a prize? Pokrovsk isn't just another dot on the map. Since the conflict ignited, it stood as Ukraine's unbreakable fortress on the Donetsk line. Its size packs a punch. But dig deeper, it's perfectly placed, a beating heart for logistics. Ukraine funnels supplies to every fighter in Donetsk through here, as reports from global outlets confirm. Putin eyes it hungrily. Seizing Pokrovsk would sever that vital lifeline, while turning the city into his own supply base. And here's the twist that tightens the noose: Pokrovsk sits just 12.4 miles from Donetsk's administrative edge. Think of that border as the finish line for Russia's whole campaign in the region. Crossing it? Donetsk falls under Moscow's shadow. Yet Pokrovsk blocks the path like an iron wall. With failures piling up in nearby Dobropylia, Russia's hopes of a quick grab look dim. Remember those 110,000 soldiers dedicated to the fight? The repeated failed pushes, like the brutal ones near Dobropylia on October 16, are whittling them down fast. Flashback to a tense moment in the trenches, a young commander's voice cracking over the radio static, the chill of autumn mud seeping through boots, heart pounding as orders echo for another advance. The air thick with uncertainty, that fleeting hope now shattered. Reports from that very day paint a grim picture. Leaked documents, uncovered by analysts like David Axe and Euromaidan Press, show Russia losing around 35,000 personnel each month in 2025. Not every loss ties to Pokrovsk, but the obsession with capturing it? It's spiking those numbers by 18 to 20%. In plain terms, without the heavy toll from this relentless drive, Russia's average monthly setbacks would dip below that staggering figure. The campaign around Pokrovsk is devouring lives, turning bold strategy into a desperate scramble. Rhetorical punch: how long can Putin afford this grind? When even his commanders sense the futility, sending waves into the fray day after day. On October 16, Russia vowed to shift tactics. No more blind rushes, they promised smarter moves. But did it work? The results screamed failure. Efforts to dodge another doomed wave crumbled under pressure. What fresh desperation awaits? As the sun sets on yet another stalled day, the question hangs heavy: will Pokrovsk's guardians hold, or face an unseen storm brewing just beyond the horizon? In the shadows of conflict, a grim reality unfolds. As Russia's military pushes into Ukraine, a chilling question lingers: has Vladimir Putin's ambition turned into desperation? What began as a quick venture now drags on, marked by heavy losses and mounting frustration. Seeking answers, we delve into the current battlefield chaos, where Russia's monthly casualty rates soar dangerously, feeding into a relentless cycle of violence. Reports from various fronts reveal an alarming trend. Russian commanders have been recklessly sending their troops into futile assaults, essentially meat grinders of warfare, illustrating a blatant disregard for their soldiers' lives. A soldier captured the aftermath in a poignant telegram post, showcasing the devastating toll among comrades. Ukraine's Air Force chimed in, condemning the callousness from above. Promises of pay and humane treatment evaporate under the harsh light of reality as soldiers are thrust into combat without adequate support or equipment. In areas like Pokrovsk and Dobropilya, these ill-fated offensives falter, with Russian troops stumbling through attacks that yield little gain. According to the UK Ministry of Defence, Russia's military advances in September came to a grinding halt, accumulating a stark contrast to the preceding month. This decline underscores a terrifying calculation: ever larger numbers of soldiers sacrificed for dwindling territory. The revelation paints a harrowing picture: mentation at play as Ukraine anticipates these mechanized assaults approaching with uncanny foresight. The relentlessly tragic cost of Russia's military strategy reverberates through regions like Dobropilya and Pokrovsk, where lives are lost in alarming numbers. Meanwhile, the toll extends beyond human cost, robbing Russia of strategic momentum, leaving haunting echoes of its former ambitions. Amidst this chaos, there comes yet another blow. Russian mechanized units fall, with recent losses potentially escalating into a grim tally of 13. The battlefield sanctions a bitter environment where hope clashes painfully with blood-stained ground, as strategies collapse under the weight of misplaced fervor. Given these escalating tensions, a perplexing question demands attention: what remains of Putin's once mighty military resolve when constant losses contradict his ambitions on the global stage? As we explore deeper, stark contrasts and unforeseen consequences emerge, climbing to a height that threatens to spiral into tragedy. What will become of a nation when sacrifice turns into a reality too heavy to bear? In a world where shadows constantly battle for dominance, a tense saga unfolds between Russia, Ukraine, and their global allies. When Russia first invaded Ukraine, President Vladimir Putin clung to the naive belief that victory would be swift, completed in mere days. But as weeks turned into months, the reality of an entrenched conflict shattered that illusion. With every passing moment, Putin's desperation grew, and now, his reliance on foreign powers has become perilously evident. As Ukraine's intelligence reveals, the far east of Russia is slipping through Putin's fingers, transforming into territories under the sway of Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un. Insights published on October 16 shed light on how China and North Korea are gradually extending their influence, effectively executing a strategy that Putin failed to anticipate. Devoid of the resources necessary for development, the Russian leader is unwittingly bartering away his own land in exchange for support. China's ambitions in Russia's Far East are particularly striking. With investments projected to reach a staggering trillion rubles, over $12.6 billion, by the end of 2025, Beijing is not investing out of charity. Rather, this financial influx serves as a calculated maneuver to tighten China's grip on a region crucial for both countries. China's Belt and Road Initiative underscores this tactic of luring nations into debt, keeping them tethered economically. But intriguing developments reveal a twist. Instead of traditional infrastructure projects, China is rapidly increasing trade dependence, gaining leverage through strategic commerce. As Russian trade with China swells by millions of tons annually, the delicate dance of dependence unfolds. Senator Viktor Kalashnikov acknowledges that components of this strategy are deeply embedded in the region's fabric. If Russia's dependency on China grows too embedded, Putin will find himself at a crossroads, whether to risk alienating his neighbor or accept a further erosion of control. While the Chinese influence intensifies, North Korea quietly follows suit. The arrival of thousands of workers from the north has not only brought crucial manpower but has also introduced alarming conditions reminiscent of slave labor. As reports describe harrowing conditions faced by North Korean laborers, it's clear that North Korea is seeking its own foothold in the Far East. Kim Jong-un, amidst this diplomatic chaos, is reportedly pocketing millions, further enriching his regime from Russian contracts. The stakes are higher than ever as Moscow continually fights to stave off economic attrition and territorial loss. Just how long can Putin maintain his hold over the Far East before he faces an irreversible shift of power? With every unmaintained promise, he risks losing not just land but the very essence of Russian sovereignty. The encroachment is palpable, yet Putin appears blinded by his ambition, too slow to adjust to the perilous landscape shifting beneath his feet. What will happen when the tide of history pulls away the foundation he stands on? As the chaotic shadows of war loom over Eastern Europe, a pivotal moment in history unfolded. When Russia initiated its aggressive campaign against Ukraine, President Vladimir Putin clung tightly to a misguided notion: the conflict would swiftly conclude. Days turned into months, and the reality revealed an entirely different narrative, one not just of military might but of desperation and unforeseen reliance on foreign allies. In a desperate bid to sustain his campaign, Putin found himself entangled in an intricate web of dependencies. The vast expanses of Russia's Far East, a region rich in resources and strategic value, began slipping through his fingers. According to reports from Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service, this territory is now being shaped by the hands of leaders like Xi Jinping of China and Kim Jong-un of North Korea. Instead of military dominance, Putin's tactics evolved into a troubling exchange territory for assistance. Imagine, for a moment, the breathtaking landscapes of Russia's Far East, juxtaposed with the looming uncertainty of foreign control. In a stunning revelation, it was reported that Chinese investments might soar to over 1 trillion rubles, around $12.6 billion, by the end of 2025. But this influx of funds carries a heavy price: the creeping presence of Chinese influence transforming the economic landscape of the region. Economic agreements become chains as Russia unwittingly surrenders its autonomy. While Chinese investment grows, a wave of North Korean labor also floods the Far East. Official accounts suggest that approximately 15,000 North Koreans have ventured into this region, with unofficial estimates hovering around 50,000. These workers, under grueling conditions, symbolize a new form of exploitation. As described by escapees, tales of harsh treatment and relentless hours paint a dire picture. For Putin, their low-cost labor serves a purpose, but for the laborers and their homeland, it's a grim path toward overshadowed sovereignty. The question looms ominously: in risking the future of Russia's own territories, is Putin inadvertently signing the death warrant for Russia's influence? The very fabric of power is shifting, blurring the lines of governance and control. As the situation develops, one must consider: how deeply can foreign investments transform a nation's identity? How long can Putin navigate this treacherous landscape while denying the reality that his grip on power is eroding? The fate of Russia's Far East hangs in the balance, tantalizingly poised on the brink of a dramatic transformation, leaving the world to ponder the ramifications of a leader willing to barter away the very land he claims to protect. In this evolving saga, explosive moments lie ahead. Will Putin's reliance on foreign powers ultimately lead to his undoing, or will he reclaim the narrative and reshape his country's destiny? The clock is ticking, and the stakes have never been higher. Imagine the desperate hum of Russian jamming towers, cluttering the skies like a swarm of angry hornets, trying to blind Ukraine's drone warriors. Remember how the Artemis drone, with its 1,000-mile reach and deadly warhead, seemed just another tool in the fight? Now, let's dive deeper into why it's sending shockwaves through Putin's defenses. Media reports from 24 sources paint a picture that's eerily close to Ukraine's homegrown Lelika drone, a warrior that's battled since 2024. Picture it slicing through the air, attacking Russia's oil giants, the stench of burning fuel lingering like a toxic victory. Officially, the Lelika stretches over 620 miles, and lugs a 110-pound bomb. Militani detailed this back in April 2024. But hold your breath. What if I told you that same drone, on October 3rd, pierced Russia 869 miles deep? Some whispers go even further, up to 932 miles. It's pulling neck and neck with the Artemis now. So, what's the real thriller here? Ukraine already has birds soaring similar distances, hauling heavier payloads. Shocking question, why lose sleep over Artemis? The secret isn't the drone itself, but the invisible force powering it. Feel the electric tension in the code, the software that cranks it into a nightmare. That's where Arterian steps in, crafting a suite that might crown Artemis as Ukraine's ultimate killer. Can you hear the engineers' quiet fervor, tapping away like doctors saving lives? Their creation? The Arterian Visual Navigation System. It thrives on the Skynode and Mission Computer, born from their joint sweat against Russia's jamming chaos. This system guides the Artemis flawlessly. It strikes targets unerring, even as satellites go dark. Plus, terminal guidance locks in, that pinpoint hug of death right at the end. Arterian CEO Lorenz Meyer boasts, software-driven freedom is flipping deterrence on its head. Our Artemis entrance spins out en masse, equipping allies with unstoppable blasts. Fiery twist, no need to mock Russia's brute force anymore, because autonomy humbles their wild jamming games. What if Ukraine's tech lords just prove they can outwit Putin's electronic wars, forever? But here's the cliffhanger whispering dread, underrated or not, this jamming-proof UAV arrives as a lethal shadow. Is Putin squirming yet, realizing his skies might shatter next? In a tense geopolitical landscape, Russia's grip on its Far East is slowly slipping away, and it's all thanks to the unexpected alliances forming around it. When Russia invaded Ukraine, Vladimir Putin believed his military operation would conclude swiftly, but reality proved him gravely mistaken. Now he finds himself cornered, relying on foreign partners like China and North Korea not just for support, but for survival. What started as an act of aggression is morphing into a desperate gamble that could cost Putin dearly. As China pours a staggering $12.6 billion into Russia's Far East, it clearly has its sights set beyond mere monetary gains. Instead of the typical infrastructure projects, China is ensnaring the region in a web of trade dependence. The sheer volume of goods exchanged has skyrocketed in just 1 year. Trade between Russia and China surged by 36%. Is this merely business, or is Beijing methodically tightening its grip on a vulnerable Russia? Each ton of traded goods is a step towards stability for China and a further entrapment for Putin. Yet while China enters through trade, North Korea sneaks in under less savory conditions. Thousands of North Korean laborers are flooding the Far East, working under harrowing circumstances for meager pay, essentially reinforcing a foothold for their regime. Every worker represents a lifeline for Kim Jong-un's ambitions as he profits from what the world might call modern slavery. Can Putin turn a blind eye to this exploitative dynamic, or will he eventually have to confront the human cost of his reliance on such desperate measures? But there's an underbelly to this alliance. The infrastructure projects that are supposed to blossom never seem to take root. Investors are left waiting while the very foundations of Russian territory are handed over in exchange for fleeting support. As territories become Chinese-dominated areas of economic control, will Putin see his once mighty empire reduced to a pawn in others' games? The stakes are rising. Russian resources are bleeding into foreign hands while countless Chinese nationals utilize special economic zones with increasingly less oversight. As native Russians find themselves outnumbered, are we witnessing the gradual erasure of Russian identity in the heart of its own land? And as Putin turns a blind eye, how much control will the Kremlin withstand before the balance tips irrevocably? What haunts Putin is the realization that his attempts to forge alliances have left his country vulnerable as foreign interests stake their claims. Can Russia afford to continue down this path, or will it lead to a total loss of sovereignty? The tensions are palpable, building to a climax that could redefine the very contours of power in the region. The question remains, in a world where alliances are forged and territories bartered, how long can a leader remain in control before his authority crumbles completely? When Russia launched its incursion into Ukraine, Vladimir Putin arrogantly thought it would be a swift adventure, wrapped up in mere days. What followed was a prolonged struggle as reality hit hard. A massive deployment of troops and resources failed to achieve the anticipated quick victory. Desperate and outmatched, Putin found himself grasping for assistance from foreign nations, leaning heavily on partners like China and North Korea. But the price of such alliances is staggering, and Russia is paying it in unexpected ways. Fast forward to today, and Putin's grip over his own nation's Far East is loosening, with Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un creeping in, altering the landscape. As outlined in evidence provided by Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service and unsettling read, China and North Korea are maneuvering to take control over significant portions of Russia's Far East. Faced with a shortage of resources and manpower to sustain military efforts, Putin's desperate measures have backfired, leading to a disturbing transformation: territorial concessions to allies that he cannot afford to alienate. China's invasive investment, projected to reach nearly ₹1 trillion by the end of 2025, approximately $12.6 billion, is alarming. Far from benevolence, this funding is a strategic play, anchoring China's influence deeper into Russian territory. While Moscow believes it's striking a mutually beneficial deal, Beijing's intentions are far from altruistic. Every investment is a calculated move in a broader game of geopolitical chess. Reports reveal a staggering boom in trade between the regions, escalating by 36% in just the first half of 2025. It's a clear signal that Russia is becoming increasingly dependent on Chinese trade, a situation that grants Beijing formidable leverage. What happens if China pulls the proverbial rug out from under Russia's feet? The implications could be dire for Putin, further tightening China's stranglehold on this resource-rich area. As if that weren't enough, North Korea is sneaking in its own brand of influence. Supposedly around 15,000 North Koreans have found their way into Russia's Far East, but estimates suggest this number could swell to 50,000. These individuals often work under horrendous conditions, functioning like cogs in a larger machine designed to bolster Putin's failing ambitions. The stark contrast is unsettling. While ordinary North Koreans toil in appalling circumstances, Kim Jong-un reportedly benefits the most, raking in $500 million annually. Russia's thirst for manpower might be a temporary fix, but it's also a terrifying gamble on Putin's part. Putin's territorial concessions could pave the way for a loss that stretches far beyond economics. Perhaps it signifies a shift in power dynamics in the region. The looming question remains: how long can Putin continue down this path before he completely loses control of his land? With each passing day, the walls close in, and his options thin out. The stage is set for a stunning twist in this geopolitical drama. Who will take the reins in the Russian Far East? In a time marked by tension and desperation, the ambitious Vladimir Putin firmly believed that the conflict sparked by Russia's invasion of Ukraine would end swiftly. Yet, as days turned into months, he realized that Russia's military was not the unstoppable force he had imagined. Instead, with every passing moment, it became apparent that Moscow's expectations were crumbling. The once feared military titan found itself increasingly reliant on foreign allies, grappling with debts that were mounting faster than he ever anticipated. With powerful figures like Xi Jinping of China and Kim Jong-un of North Korea casting their shadows over Russia, the stakes escalated. According to reports from Ukraine's foreign intelligence, these nations are not merely distant allies but crucial players integrating themselves into Russia's Far East, threatening to leave Putin with far less power and territory than he once controlled. Chinese investments in this region are projected to surge to an astounding ₹1 trillion by 2025, translating to over $12.6 billion. However, this financial influx comes with strings attached. It's a part of a broader, more calculated strategy by China, a quiet but deliberate method of tightening its grip on Russia while presenting itself as a savior. Unlike traditional foreign investments aimed at development, this strategy appears designed to siphon resources and influence, leaving Russia more dependent than ever. Is this truly an ally or an imperialist in disguise, one might wonder? With trade volumes soaring and China establishing itself as a foundational force in regions once considered Russian strongholds, it's become painfully clear that the Kremlin's grasp on its territory is slipping. The sound of cash registers ringing in Chinese trade offices echoes ominously as the balance of power shifts ever so quietly. Meanwhile, in the idiosyncratic realms of North Korea, a similar narrative unfolds. North Korean workers, some say as many as 50,000, are filtering into Russia's Far East under harrowing conditions, effectively modern-day slavery. While these laborers toil away, hidden from the world, Kim Jong-un receives annual sums of $500 million, a staggering amount for a nation often depicted as impoverished. The question lingers, who truly benefits from this arrangement, and what debt is Russia incurring in its pursuit of survival? But there's more at stake than mere contributions to labor costs. Putin's desperation is steering him into a precarious niche, where he risks ceding control over vast tracts of land in the name of immediate need. A chilling possibility emerges: could Russia find itself entirely outmaneuvered, effectively a puppet in a web spun by its supposed allies? As the situation spirals, the prospect of turning back becomes increasingly unlikely. Putin is ensnared in a dilemma that demands urgent solutions, leading to an unsettling finale. Will he, in a moment of desperation, take actions that could lead to irrevocable consequences for both his country and its sovereign identity? The tension thickens as the clock ticks down on an unrelenting game of geopolitical chess, with Russia's territorial integrity hanging in the balance. Imagine this: America's war machine, built on billion-dollar jets and tanks, suddenly finds itself outpaced by cheap buzzing drones from a battlefield half a world away. What if the superpower that invented modern tech is now begging for lessons from Ukraine's scrappy innovators? To recap, the US poured fortunes into massive aerial defenses and fighter jets, yet skimped on the tiny killers, proving devastating against invaders. As CNN noted on September 15, American troops crave the real-world savvy for battling unmanned foes? Yet here's the twist: while the US shines in crafting pricey powerhouses like stealth bombers and armored behemoths, it's woefully unready to mass-produce swarms of low-cost drones. Picture factories humming with precision missiles, but silence where buzzing fleets should swarm. CNN nailed it, and while the US has excelled at building large, expensive weaponry, it's in many ways unprepared to quickly produce large quantities of small, cheap systems like drones. That's not just one voice crying out. On October 14, Warzone spotlighted Lieutenant General Charles Costanza, head of V Corps, bluntly admitting the gap. "We're behind," he confessed at the Association of the U.S. Army's annual symposium. "I'll just be candid, I think we know we're behind." His words echoed through the hall, heavy with urgency, the air thick with the scent of polished boots and unspoken worries. For nearly a decade, since the Nagorno-Karabakh clashes in Armenia and Azerbaijan unveiled drone dominance, U.S. leaders talked and observed. Drones danced in the skies there, shattering tanks with eerie precision, their whirring blades slicing the night like invisible assassins. But talking? That's not building. It's not wielding. Ukraine? They plunged into action for 4 grueling years, crafting, crashing, conquering with these tireless sentinels. The US? Too fixated on grand gestures, leaving them exposed. Now, the era of mere observation crumbles. America faces a nightmare it never dreamed, its own defense giants scrambling to catch up. Requests flood in thousands for Ukraine's raw drone intel, especially videos of triumphant hits. Explosions bloom on screen, shrapnel raining like fiery confetti, the ground trembling under each impact. CNN reports Ukraine's digital minister, Mikhailo Fedorov, seizing the moment. Ukraine has a chance to leverage its drone innovation. His strategy? Deepen bonds with Western allies, turning battlefield grit into golden alliances. Feel the shift, the underdog dictating terms. Meanwhile, the US greenlights massive deals, like those with Ukraine's innovators, because for once, they're trailing in the tech race. As Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth declares, lethality will not be hindered by self-imposed restrictions, especially when it comes to harnessing technologies we invented but were slow to pursue. His voice cuts sharp, frustration simmering like a storm on the horizon. Hegseth warns of the peril: drone technology is advancing so rapidly, our major risk is risk avoidance. Imagine the boardrooms buzzing, executives sweating under fluorescent lights, realizing hesitation could doom them. But what secret edge does Ukraine hold that could flip the script on global powers forever? In an era of shifting power dynamics, Vladimir Putin's ill-fated invasion of Ukraine marked a perilous turning point. Initially convinced that his so-called special military operation would lead to quick victory, Putin found himself trapped in a labyrinth of miscalculation. As Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service chillingly revealed, the consequences of his actions extend beyond borders and into the very fabric of Russia itself. Unbeknownst to him, the leaders of China and North Korea were waiting patiently, eager to exploit Russia's vulnerabilities. This story unfolds amidst the scent of gunpowder and the echo of military boots on foreign soil. Here lies the shocking truth: as Russia crumbles under the weight of war, two formidable allies, Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un, are poised to seize control of the vast and resource-rich Far East. How could such a powerful leader let his own territory slip through his fingers? In 2025, as the cries of citizens grow louder and the conflict escalates, China is investing heavily in the Far East, an estimated trillion rubles by the end of 2025, or roughly $12.6 billion. This influx of Chinese capital is not an act of charity, it's a cleverly crafted strategy to establish dominance. The Belt and Road Initiative looms large, reminding the world of how economic leverage can suffocate a nation without a single shot fired. As Russia's vulnerable regions become increasingly dependent on Chinese trade, the region's identity is quietly morphing, shifting toward Chinese interests. Can Putin recognize that these investments come at a price? The stakes are high, and the implications stretch far beyond mere economics. Shifting gears, North Korea is not to be overlooked. Amid dire conditions, tens of thousands of North Korean workers are ushered into Russia's Far East. Are these individuals merely seeking opportunities, or are they pawns in a far more dangerous game? The harrowing experiences of laborers in subhuman conditions hint at a grim reality, where North Korea profits while its people toil under oppressive regimes. The clock is ticking. As alliances form and tensions rise, will Putin be too late to reclaim territories now entwined with foreign hands? The balance of power shifts, and the world watches, captivated by the unfolding saga of control, desperation, and ambition. Do you feel the tension, the urgency? The clock is ticking against Putin, and he stands alone. The stage is set for an impending clash, where the Russian leader must face the consequences of his actions. Is this merely a prologue to a far more dramatic conclusion? Only time will tell. In early 2022, an audacious gamble unfolded, reshaping the modern political landscape forever. The Russian president, driven by a thirst for dominance, ordered an invasion of Ukraine, believing he could swiftly subdue his neighbor. He painted the invasion as a noble mission, claiming to rescue Ukraine from mythical forces he labeled as Nazis. Yet, the world recognized this for what it truly was: an insatiable lust for territory, resources, and control. Putin underestimated the resistance he would meet. With a vast military machine at his disposal, tanks, missiles, and naval power, he envisioned a rapid conquest, a triumph to echo through history. But reality painted a different picture. The Ukrainian spirit ignited like a fierce flame, civilians and soldiers alike embraced their roles as defenders of their homeland. An unexpected unity emerged, challenging the narrative of a weak and divided Ukraine. What followed was a stunning turnaround. In the face of adversity, the Ukrainian people displayed unwavering bravery, pushing back against the might of the Russian army. Cities once thought to be easy targets became battlegrounds of resilience and fierce resistance. Home after home echoed with the sounds of determination, as the Ukrainian flag waved defiantly in the air, its colors proclaiming hope and courage. Amidst the chaotic engagements, something remarkable occurred. Ukraine, undeterred by initial setbacks, started reclaiming lost territories. The Russian advance slowed, then ground to a halt, as Ukrainian forces advanced beyond their borders into Russian territory, a humiliating twist for Putin. The audacity of the situation became palpable. The aggressor now found himself facing a powerful, determined adversary on the verge of reclaiming its freedom. Yet, as the situation unfolded, Putin's ambitions began to slip through his fingers. With a competitive spirit now igniting the resistance, Ukraine earned a reputation as a formidable force, drawing attention from nations worldwide. The tides had turned, leaving beyond a shadow of a doubt, this conflict would not conclude as the Russian leader had anticipated. As 2025 dawns, Russia confronts not only military setbacks but a deeply stricken economy. Despite its size, the nation's resources dwindle, and the stakes rise even higher. With allies in strange places, the consequences of reliance on foreign powers emerge. Russia's Far East, with its vast expanse, now becomes the subject of an alarming new dilemma. Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service recently outlined a grave development: China and North Korea are quietly expanding their control over Russia's Far East. With a tidal wave of investment from China nearing $12.6 billion by 2025, it becomes apparent this is more than investment, it's influence. As economic ties deepen, can Russia maintain its grip on this important territory while attempting to pay its debts? The involvement of the North Koreans adds another layer of complexity to this precarious situation. Up to 50,000 North Korean workers operate under dire conditions in Russia, promising short-term labor yet hinting at long-term consequences for Putin's authority. As these states begin to entwine, who truly holds the power? Putin's desperate maneuvers to sustain his military ambitions may result in a bitter irony, ceding control of his land to foreign powers. Will the Russian leader realize too late the escalating consequences of his hubristic choices? Are the stakes in the Far East merely the beginning of a deeper geopolitical crisis? Ukraine's relentless pushback has reclaimed lost territories. They've even nudged into Russian soil at times. This humiliation on Putin's home turf has built up. Ukraine has grown stronger, more strategic. Now, they're hailed as one of the world's top military forces. Shocking, isn't it? How did a nation under siege turn the tables so brutally? Ukraine escalated further. They launched deep strikes. Missiles soared. Drones hummed through the air, targeting Russia's prized assets. Feel the rumble of explosions. Smell the charred ruins left in their wake. The impacts glare back at you. Russia teeters in economic chaos. An unrelenting fuel crisis grips them. No end in sight. Oil production slashed. Citizens feel the bite. Paying double for gas and essentials now. Up from just a year ago. Scents of rationed fuel fill the streets. Anxiety lingers in every petrol queue. Ukraine's weapons evolve. Drones grow mightier. Missiles more precise. No corner of Russia feels secure. The war crept home, surpassing the Kremlin's darkest nightmares. Even their worst plans failed to predict this invasion of fear. Dire losses mount. Over 1.1 million casualties now. Grim milestone reached. A British Ministry of Defense report shines light. Around 332,000 Russian troops dead or wounded in 2025 alone. Ukrainian General Staff tracks daily agony. Nearly 950 more Russian lives shattered each day. Voices of the fallen echo in the silence. Grief wraps the nation like a shroud. Isolation grows. Russia's severed from much of the world. Western allies struck back. Europe and North America unleashed sanctions. Financial blows hit hard, weakening the Kremlin's grip. Banks cut off. Businesses shunned. Putin and his people walled in. Alone. Cold winds of separation howl. All this stems from one man's hubris. Vladimir Putin craved power. He grabbed Ukraine's lands like a thief in the night. Lifetime of desires blinded him, masking the madness. But now, he confronts the wreckage. His empire cracks. Russian citizens stir. War weariness brews resentment. They tire of this carnage, turning bitter eyes on Putin, blaming him for this unending storm. Is this the fall of a tyrant? Or just the beginning of deeper divisions? As people question, alliances fray. The cost could shatter more than borders. Will Putin's reign endure? Or fade into the forgotten winds of history? Stay tuned. Dawn could bring twists you never saw coming. As the world watches, Russia's persistent conflict reveals a stark reality. What was predicted to be a swift military operation has spiraled into a prolonged ordeal. Vladimir Putin, once confident and unwavering, now faces growing dissent among the Russian populace. Can he maintain control as calls for peace grow louder? Recent surveys by the Levada Center paint a troubling picture for the Kremlin. A staggering 66% of Russians now favor negotiations over continued hostilities. Among younger generations, the yearning for resolution is even more pronounced, with 80% of individuals under 24 advocating for dialogue. As the echoes of war resonate through families, personal stakes rise. 58% of respondents acknowledge that this so-called special military operation is affecting their lives. 22% report significant psychological and financial tolls, haunted by loss, injury, and intensified family strife. Even within the high echelons of power, dissatisfaction is gnawing at the establishment. Oligarchs and military officials are voicing fatigue and frustration over the war's trajectory, while Putin's desperate measures to manipulate public perception are increasingly evident. He's cracking down on dissent, limiting access to independent media, and repeating grand declarations about the war's necessity and noble sacrifices for a supposed greater good. Yet, this facade falters as the conflict drags on far longer than anticipated. The tension is palpable. What will be the tipping point for a weary populace? Victory seems distant as emotional and economic strains intertwine within the lives of ordinary Russians. Will the desire for peace triumph over the relentless drumbeat of propaganda and harsh realities? Just as the stakes rise, so too does the uncertainty surrounding Putin's grip on power in the future of Russia itself. The next twist in this saga could redefine the nation. Are they approaching a reckoning? The scene is set on a cold winter's day, where the weight of bitter defeat hangs over the Kremlin like a thick fog. In the height of ambition, Vladimir Putin once believed his military operation in Ukraine would end swiftly, almost in the blink of an eye. Yet, here we are, trapped in a vigorous struggle far beyond anyone's expectations. The cheers of justified conquest have diminished, drowned out by the drumming reality of loss and despair that resonates through Russia's streets. With every passing day, the facade crafted by the regime begins to crumble. People are awakening to the stark truth that the ongoing conflict is sapping their lives and resources. Summer, once filled with promises of glory, morphed into a grim narrative of stagnation. Just months ago, Putin declared a grand offensive, rallying his troops with fiery speeches and insistent bravado. This was to be the decisive operation that would shatter Ukraine's defenses and secure total dominance over Donetsk. Captured officers shared tales of assured victory, painting a vivid picture of Russian forces marching forward, unopposed and unstoppable. But as history has shown, rhetoric does not translate to reality. Despite waves of troops, tanks, and artillery, the so-called decisive summer offensive transformed into yet another grueling stalemate. The anticipated gains dwindled to mere whispers of minor territorial shifts, while fiercely guarded cities like Kramatorsk and Slavyansk continued to elude the grasp of Russian forces. Strategically, critical areas like Pokrovsk remain just out of reach, taunting the very foundations of Kremlin propaganda. Analysts grimly ponder that reclaiming the Donbas could span several years, and the aspirations for a unified Ukraine under Russian control could stretch on for decades. As darkness envelopes the battlefield, whispers of despair echo within the hearts of soldiers and citizens alike. Trust in the regime's promises has eroded to a mere trickle. Families gather in hushed tones, wondering how long they can endure the consequences of an unending conflict. The dream of a swift victory fades, replaced by a haunting realization: the journey ahead may be far more treacherous than anyone ever dared to imagine. In the tumultuous landscape of the ongoing Russo-Ukrainian conflict, government analysts predict that Russia's grip on the Donbas region remains tenuous. Cities like Kramatorsk and Slavyansk remain steadfastly under Ukrainian control. Despite the Kremlin's assurances of impending victory, reality tells a different tale. As Russian losses climb, 700,000 lives lost, equating to 110 casualties per square kilometer, the confidence in the leadership of Vladimir Putin is crumbling like the very ground beneath their feet. His regime's promises have dwindled to scraps of trust. Each failed offensive propels him closer to a precipice. Analysts speculate about the consequences if another major attempt, his last, desperate gamble, fails. Opposition voices are rising, daring to suggest that retreat or truce might be Putin's only saviors, possibly announced before the year closes. Every passing week holds monumental stakes. A renewed offensive on the Donbas could shift the tides of this drawn-out struggle. For nearly 2 years, Russia has wrestled futilely to secure control of the region, yet recent reports indicate a stunned Russian military that has not marked any significant victories in over 8 months. They are amassing forces for what they hope will be a decisive breakthrough in the coming months. But what if they fail again? Ukrainian forces might be forced to yield, or alternatively, Russia's blood-soaked efforts could simply be another nail in its own coffin. The next 2 months don't just promise a climax in the battle for Donbas, they threaten to reshape the entire conflict, leaving lasting scars and questions on both nations. This failure could reshape the landscape altogether. As it stands, intervention continues with support groaning under the weight of dwindling resources. The question lingers: how long can Putin cling to power while losing ground in a war that was meant to show strength? As whispers of discontent rise, and a nation grapples with the reality of defeat, the contrast grows starkly vivid. The once mighty bear now appears wounded and vulnerable, caught in a web that may suffocate it.
Will the echo of history repeat itself, or will the tides turn in favor of a moribund regime?
The answer may come in blood or silence, as nations hold their breath for the days ahead. Only time will tell if these strategies truly solidify control or unravel the very fabric of power in the region.
When the conflict began, many believed it would be a short skirmish.
Vladimir Putin, with his vast military, was confident that victory would be swift. Yet, the reality was starkly different. The war dragged on, and Russia soon found itself facing significant challenges. Desperation led Putin to look beyond his nation's borders for support, forging unexpectedly deeper ties with foreign partners. This reliance has turned into a troubling debt for Russia, particularly in the Far East, where its grip is loosening. Reports from Ukraine's intelligence have unveiled a troubling trend. China and North Korea are incrementally seizing control of this strategic region, undermining Russia's authority more than anyone anticipated. China's investments in the Russian Far East are on a meteoric rise, projected to reach nearly $12.6 billion by 2025. While Russia hopes for a beneficial relationship, these financial injections are part of a grand strategy for China's expansion. As Chinese businesses entrench themselves deeper into the region, their focus lies not just in investments but in establishing their own influence over resource extraction and trade networks. With every dollar spent, Beijing grows its foothold, making Russia increasingly dependent. Meanwhile, North Korea is seizing this opportunity to bolster its presence. Reports indicate that thousands of North Koreans are entering the Far East, sometimes under conditions akin to forced labor. This influx serves a dual purpose, providing Russia with the manpower it so desperately needs while simultaneously strengthening North Korea's influence. Kim Jong-un is reaping substantial financial benefits, with estimates suggesting that the regime pockets millions while its workers toil under dire circumstances. As territory and resources slip from Putin's grasp, he must confront a chilling reality: his allies aren't just partners but potential usurpers. Each decision he makes is marked by this creeping sense of loss. What is the cost of survival when allies grow powerful in your own lands? As these two nations extend their reach, one must wonder, will Putin's grasp on the Far East fade entirely, or will he attempt a desperate reclamation as the consequences of this partnership loom ever closer? In the heart of an escalating conflict, Ukraine masters a resilient strategy, adapting its tactics to carve out a path of survival against overwhelming odds. With relentless determination, Ukrainian forces fortify critical areas, launching powerful strikes against Russian infrastructure. They leverage every ounce of available resource, translating their fight into an ongoing saga of resistance. Amid this chaos, they highlight every victory, showcasing their ability to withstand external pressure as global allies, including the United States and fellow NATO members, rally to their side. Despite Russian assertions of an imminent breakthrough, these beliefs have proven baseless. If the tides turn unfavorably for Russia once again, support for both the war and Putin's regime is poised to diminish substantially. The momentum may even reach a tipping point, wherein the Kremlin chief discovers his choices are dwindling. In a world meticulously constructed by Putin, the desire for a lingering conflict persists. He views victory as an essential prize worth any sacrifice. He continues to frame the operation as a special military operation, a term designed to create a facade of control over a distant enemy, while shielding the Russian populace from the dire realities at hand. Yet, as their realities begin to intertwine, Ukrainian efforts increasingly pierce through this narrative illusion. The truth manifests itself: a brutal war is underway, straining Russia with losses reminiscent of historic tragedies. With the narrative of a controlled operation fracturing, Putin's options shrink dramatically. Should his forces falter in capturing the industrial jewel, Donbas, he faces a pivotal decision. One route could entail a temporary ceasefire, an option laden with perilous risks. It requires navigating a treacherous landscape of domestic discontent, seeking to rekindle support while crafting a renewed justification to re-engage. Alternatively, he could consider a peace accord with Ukraine. Such an agreement would need to promise tempting terms for Russia, serving as a veneer of victory. Yet, the question looms large: can Putin recalibrate his strategy without further inflaming the sentiments of his people? As tensions mount on both sides, the battlefield evolves beyond mere physical confrontations. It is a chess game of influence, strategy, and survival, echoing the cries of the past while shaping the future of a nation. In the shadows of his crumbling empire, Vladimir Putin grapples with dire choices: stirking support to reignite the conflict or forging a fragile peace deal that he twists into a sham victory. He plots to restart the invasion later,
blaming Ukraine for violations in a desperate excuse.
But this path slithers with peril, because Russia is no longer the unstoppable force he imagined.
Is Putin the mastermind he claims, or a cornered fox facing the hunter's gun?
Imagine the Kremlin's grand halls, echoing with the creak of ancient wooden doors and the musty scent of old secrets. Putin schemes to frame any peace as triumph, saving the right to surge back when tides shift. Yet, the chill of reality bites deep. Russia falters, not conquering but bleeding. Its soldiers stagger under the weight of unrelenting defeat, boots mud-caked and hands raw from endless marches. No momentum builds, instead, devastating losses pile like jagged stones in a storm.
Can Putin simply command the negotiation table, expecting Zelensky to bow low? Why do echoes of his poor judgments haunt every corner now?
Because he spurned a golden chance earlier this year, a ceasefire brokered by Donald Trump. The air was thick with tension then, filled with whispers of deals that could end the agony.
Trump leaned easy on Putin, pressing Zelensky for compromise. Putin could have seized it, quelling the inferno before flames consumed more.
But he gambled wrong, his arrogance like a bitter chill on the spine. Now, the price looms large, as Trump's fury boils over.
Donald Trump's patience has cracked wide open.
His anger like thunder rolling across battlefields.
He fumes over Putin's deceitful games, posting blasts that Ukraine can crush Russia and reclaim lost lands.
The Trump team ramps up support, wielding sharp tools, American intel guiding precise drone strikes, the hum of engines buzzing like vengeful wasps, and hints of long-range Tomahawk missiles slicing through the sky. So, the war's harsh truths sharpen even bolder.
Has Putin's pride unleashed irreversible doom? Or will this twist reveal a humiliated leader begging for mercy?
The battlefield waits, its sense of gunpowder and sweat promising no easy victories. Imagine this: Vladimir Putin, the iron-fisted ruler of Russia, once dreaming of a quick victory in Ukraine, now facing a nightmare. His so-called special operation has dragged on, bleeding his nation dry.
With no end in sight, he's borrowing from shady allies, shackling Russia in debt. But how is he repaying them?
Not with cash his economy can't afford, but with chunks of his own country's territory.
Shocking, right?
312 characters. To recap the previous segment, Trump's frustration with Putin's deceit has boiled over. He's declared Ukraine capable of total victory, stripping back every inch of stolen land. US aid pours in, intelligence for precise drone assaults, whispers of Tomahawk missiles raining down.
Russia's illusions shatter, the war's brutal truth exposes Putin's failures utterly.
Now, picture the grim reality dawning on ordinary Russians. War's no longer distant thunder. They slam home like relentless pounding on a fragile door.
Putin can't spin this as a special operation anymore.
The scale of slaughter echoes World War II horrors, bodies piling up in blood-stained snow, the acrid smell of gunpowder clinging to frozen air. His troops falter in Donbass. Failed assaults leave craters strewn with wreckage, the metallic tang of defeat on every breeze.
Putin's cornered, like a tiger in a trap. Two paths remain, both treacherous. 1. A temporary ceasefire.
Play dead, then pounce later.
But pause means chaos at home. Riots simmering under the surface. Economy crumbling, factories silent. How does he rally the mob again without unraveling his grip? The other option? A peace deal.
Twist the narrative into a sham victory. Retain invasion rights for tomorrow, blame Ukraine for betrayal. We fought bravely, he'd claim. Yet, Russia limps to the table, bruised and weakened. No triumphs to boast.
Momentum slips away hourly.
Heavy losses mount, scars seeping not just from bullets, but resource drains leaving bones exposed.
This calamity? Self-inflicted.
Early this year, Trump mediated.
Lenient eyes on Putin, pushing Zelensky to fold. A golden exit existed. But no. Pride blinded him.
Wrong call, catastrophic cost.
Trump's wrath ignited.
Putin's web of lies has burned me, he roared.
Ukraine now surges with fire, reclaiming ground amid flaming debris and echoing cries. Russia's fate seals darker.
Casualties swell like a tidal wave crashing shores.
Crises multiply, silence punctuated by distant booms. Economy spirals, a vortex of despair sucking hope dry. Even Putin, the master illusionist, scrambles. power cracks in his fists. No more chess moves left. Enter the crescendo of humiliation in St. Petersburg. Hundreds of brave souls breach Putin's Iron Curtain.
Defying censorship's chokehold, they march through chilling fog.
Shouts echo, "Stop the madness." Flowers trampled under boots, faces red with fury. Propaganda crumbles under their roar. Dig deeper into the despair unfolding. See Russia's catastrophic toll, facts Kremlin censors erase. Tanks reduced to scrap heaps, the bitter stink of failure pervasive. Neighboring conflicts loom, shadows lengthening worldwide.
But wait, the ultimate twist shatters everything. As Putin bargains away Russia's Far East, China's grasp tightening like icy fingers, North Korea's laborers toiling in slave sweat, he's not just losing land.
Xi and Kim plot a grand coup.
Their pact whispers through winds, seize the East, install puppets. Putin, desperate, loses allies and control. In this betrayal's heart, a shocking revelation emerges. His friends aim to dismantle Russia from within, casting him as the humiliated fool who gifted his empire away. Stay vigilant, the fall could pull us all. In the chaos of war, Vladimir Putin's confidence was misplaced from the start.
When Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine, he believed victory was just days away. Yet, as the conflict has dragged on, that optimism has crumbled.
As we delve deeper into the situation, we confront a shocking reality. Despite an army of millions, Russia is now heavily reliant on foreign allies, struggling to sustain its war efforts. Putin's arrogance has put his nation deep in debt, and the repayments may come at a dire cost territory.
With both China and North Korea extending their influence into Russia's Far East, Putin's control over vast swaths of land is slipping away. According to Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service, these nations are methodically undermining Russia's sovereignty. As they prepare for a more pronounced economic presence, the question looms, how long before Putin loses total control?
Reports suggest that China's investments in the Far East could surge to a staggering $1 trillion, over $12 billion by 2025. But this is no act of charity.
As China deepens its economic footprint in Russia, it's doing so with the precision of a master tactician.
Instead of infrastructure projects, what we see is an avalanche of trade volume soaring by 5.5 million tons just in 2024.
What lies beneath this figure? Leverage. As Russia's leaders cling to the idea that they are making savvy investments, they're blind to the trap being laid. They're not gaining allies, they're becoming reliant on a formidable adversary.
Each handshake masks a tightening grip, and the sensation of losing control is palpable.
Now consider North Korea. As workers flood into Russia, a dark underbelly of this scenario emerges.
Estimates suggest 15,000 North Koreans have crossed into Putin's territory, but unofficial figures might place that number as high as 50,000.
These workers, enduring slave-like conditions, represent another layer of influence, one that comes at a grim cost to their humanity.
Despite this exploitation, North Korea is capitalizing, pulling in an estimated $500 million annually.
For Putin, the influx of low-cost labor seems like a pragmatic choice, but at what price? The chains of dependency are tightening further. From an economic perspective, Russia is improvidently gambling with its future. Is Putin unwittingly sacrificing long-term stability for short-term gains?
Every trade route that diverts from Moscow threatens to erode Russian sovereignty a little more. As we unravel the threads of this complex narrative, we come away with one haunting conclusion: the more aid Russia accepts, the more territory it stands to lose. The question remains, can Putin reclaim his grip, or have the hands of fate already slipped away? With the stakes escalating, the battle for control over these regions intensifies. As Ukraine pushes back, Putin's lands may become a chessboard for foreign interests. The tension mounts. How will this saga end? Only time will tell if Russia can reclaim its former strength or if it will succumb to the invasive influence of its own supposed allies. In a world of shifting allegiances, one nation is precariously losing its grip on vast territories. How did a once mighty empire find itself giving away its land? As Russia's military venture into Ukraine unfolded, Vladimir Putin remained firmly under the delusion that his campaign would wrap up swiftly. Days turned into weeks, and weeks morphed into years. The sheer force of Russia's military might was supposed to guarantee victory, but it failed spectacularly. Now, Putin is making desperate deals, relying on foreign powers to fill the gaps as his war effort crumbles.
The once unconquerable Far East is slipping through his fingers, just as the Ukrainian intelligence service revealed on October 16.
Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un are making strategic moves, aiming to turn Russia's Far East into a territory of foreign control.
The startling claim? Putin is allegedly using Russia's land as a bargaining chip to repay his few remaining allies.
Moscow's desperation has reached alarming heights. It is courting economic partnerships at the expense of its sovereignty. In a shocking twist, Putin must acknowledge that Russia can no longer develop these regions independently.
Picture it, a land once under the might of the Kremlin now on the edge of being completely overrun by foreign interests. China is digging deep into its pockets, with investments in the Far East predicted to soar to 1 trillion rubles by 2025. That's over $12 billion. This isn't charity, it's a calculated strategy to ensnare Russia further into China's sphere of influence, rather than building infrastructures like previous initiatives.
China is cleverly banking on trade dependencies, creating a golden noose around the Russian economy. Imagine the flow of goods increasing by 36% in just a year. Yet, the stakes escalate. Putin is losing vital revenues from the very resources that should fuel his war machine. Every transaction has a ripple effect. Could it be that he is mortgaging the future for short-term survival? The more China exerts control over trade, the less power Putin has to influence his own territory. But the encroachment does not stop with China. Enter North Korea, a country gnawing at Russia's sides, sending thousands of workers to the eastern regions under appalling conditions. Reports indicate around 15,000 laborers officially, with estimates reaching up to 50,000 in the shadows. Every worker is a pawn, and while Putin sees cheap labor, Kim Jong-un sees a way to deepen his influence. With North Korea raking in $500 million a year, it poses an unexpected question: how long until these workers demand a voice, or worse, a stake in their new home? As these events unfold, an air of uncertainty grips Russia's leadership. Will it bend to the pressures of foreign control, or will it lash out defiantly, risking further isolation? The chessboard is set, but who will control the moves? The clock is ticking, and each tick reverberates through the corridors of power, echoing the imminent loss of a vast empire. Imagine the thunderous roar of artillery echoing across the misty fields, shells whistling through the air like vengeful spirits, as Ukraine's defenders turned the tide against an advancing foe. What started as a bold push faltered under precise strikes from first-person view drones, their cameras capturing every tense moment, shredding armored threats before they could close in. But how deep did this trap run, and what hidden strategies sealed the invaders' fate? Explosions ripped through the dawn fog, the acrid smell of scorched earth hanging heavy, as Ukrainian artillery zeroed in on enemy lines with unerring accuracy. Those booming barrages pinned down the aggressors, ensuring not a single tank or infantry fighting vehicle dared approach the vital outpost known as Chicago. Picture the chaos: Russian forces weaving through dense Ukrainian woodlands, branches snapping under treads, hoping the shadows would cloak their advance. Yet those very trees became a deadly snare, luring them into a web of calculated ambushes. Ukraine struck back fiercely, and by the counteroffensive's end, 9 tanks and infantry fighting vehicles lay in ruins, twisted metal smoking under the gray sky. For more bore the scars of damage, likely sidelined for good, their crews facing the grim reality of abandonment. Russia's troops have a pattern etched in history, from the early days of the conflict on March 1, 2022, right up to now, ditching their machines at the first sign of peril. Feel the heart-pounding dilemma: would you huddle inside a hulking, sluggish target, the whine of drones growing louder overhead? Or bolt for cover on foot, shrinking your silhouette amid the underbrush? That's the split-second choice haunting those soldiers, and too often, fleeing leaves the wounded vehicles ripe for Ukrainian capture, turning the tide in a single, desperate sprint. But Chicago wasn't the only prize they eyed that fateful October 16. Nearby, the quiet village of Volodymyrivka drew their gaze too, its defenders rallying with the Azov National Guard in a symphony of coordinated resistance. From Volodymyrivka's rugged edges came the smoking gun of Ukraine's masterful ploy, raw footage released on the Sun's channel, painting a vivid portrait of retribution. The 82nd Air Assault Brigade orchestrated the snare, deploying first-person view and reconnaissance drones that hovered like watchful eagles, their lenses piercing the haze. Grainy feeds reveal the intruders' armored columns rumbling forward, engines growling in defiance, unaware of the noose tightening. One drone's shadow dances over a lumbering vehicle, then dives left in a blur, slamming home with devastating precision on its vulnerable tracks, the crunch of impact vibrating through the air.
Pattern after pattern unfolds, scouts spotting movements, strikes following like lightning, each hit a thunderclap that halted momentum cold. Yet amid this whirlwind of defense, a chilling question lingers: what if those forests hid not just traps, but a larger reversal, where the hunters became the hunted? As the brigade's drones circled relentlessly, exposing every feint and falter, Russia's advance crumbled into disarray.
The footage doesn't lie: tanks grinding to halts, crews scrambling in panic, the metallic tang of fear mixing with gunpowder. Ukraine's forces, unyielding, pressed their advantage, but whispers of deeper incursions hinted at battles yet to unfold. How far would the aggressors push before the full weight of this ambush broke them entirely? Imagine this: Vladimir Putin, filled with cocky delusion, launches his so-called special operation against Ukraine. He dreams of lightning victory in days. But failure crashes in like a thunderclap. The sheer might of Russia's forces? Enough? No. Now, he's begging foreign pals for troops, cash, everything. Russia's drowning in debt, repaying not with rubles, but with slabs of sacred land in the Far East. Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un slipped their claws in, turning these icy expanses into puppet economic playgrounds, per Ukraine's intelligence spies. Putin's trapped, watching his empire crumble bit by bit. Is this the bitter twist of fate slamming a tyrant? Picture the sting of ice on bare skin in Vladivostok's biting winds. Picture the rumble of oil tankers groaning down the Amur River. Does a desperate leader truly grasp the magnitude of his blunders? Pause. In that frozen void, Putin clings to China and India for trade salvation. The Kremlin, once viewed as an equal partner, now bows to nations seizing on its fragility post-Ukraine invasion. Feel the sharp chill of isolation. Sanctions choke Russia's oil exports. Prices capped, the nation pivots east, flogging barrels at steep discounts. China snags $10 billion in savings from Russian crude in 2022 and 2023. The acrid scent of diesel lingers in the air. India feasts too. Putin frames it as a shrewd move to sustain the war machine. But enemies smell weakness, gouging profits while forging leverage. Can one man's vanity blind him to this obscene theft? He grits his teeth, acknowledging the East's vital pulse, from frozen Far East wilds to bustling Asia. Yet, failure stalks him. Time after time, he falters in claiming dominion. Instead of Russia infiltrating foes, China and North Korea sneak in like shadows, embedding their grasp. Putin's own blueprint breeds this reversal. Feel the taut rope of defeat, every knot a reminder of missteps. In September, think tanks like the Carnegie Endowment bear the truth. Russia dumps all eggs into China's basket. What emerges? A deepening vassalage. Putin kneels willingly, trading sovereignty for Ukrainian crumbs. Westward isolation, his arrogant choice, lashes back. China's lifeline pulses stronger as estrangement widens. No exit exists. A decade ago, ditching the West meant embracing Beijing. But now? Feel the suffocating squeeze of inescapable dependence. The void gulps deeper. What twisted irony devours his legacy? Would he pay this ghastly price to cling to fading glory? The bitter winds howl louder, promising no dawn. Imagine this: what if the mighty bear of Russia is quietly handing over its frozen frontiers to a dragon's grasp, all to fund an endless fight? Shocking, right? As trade ties tighten like an iron vice around Khabarovsk, could Putin wake up to find his empire carved up by silent invaders? From the last twist, trade volumes exploded by another 36% in early 2025. China dodged risky loans, opting to bind Russian lands through sheer economic hunger. No coincidences here, just calculated moves. Now, picture the icy winds howling across vast Siberian plains. China positions itself with ironclad leverage over Khabarovsk. One day soon, it could just whisper a threat. Pull the trade lifeline? Beijing seizes the reins it craves. The air thickens with unspoken tension, as deals echo in dimly lit halls. Senator Dagan warns of deeper shadows. China's cash floods into ripping out the Earth's treasures, raw resources yanked from Russia's soil. Hear the grind of machinery under starless skies? Smell the metallic tang of extracted ore? Putin forfeits billions in potential wealth. Those veins of gold, oil, timber, now fuel someone else's rise. How does a leader settle his debts when coffers run dry?
Desperation breeds dark bargains, Ukraine's spies reveal. Is this the price of pride? Yet, economic webs aren't China's only snare. In a land bursting with 1.4 billion souls, people become pawns in a grand game. China wields this human tide masterfully. Slowly, it unleashes what Ukraine's intelligence dubs a stealthy population shift in the Far East. Up to 2 million citizens cross borders, settling between the rugged Urals and Vladivostok's salty shores. Feel the chill of unfamiliar footsteps on snow-dusted streets? Putin nods approval, every step planned. Most arrive visa-free, blending into special economic zones, or SEZs, dotting the region. These zones? Enclaves defying national rules. Businesses hum under altered laws, trade flows freer, taxes lighter. But in Russia's wild east, it twists sinister. China crafts SEZs where edicts feel more Beijing than Moscow. Echoes of foreign tongues mix with the crunch of boots on permafrost. Control ebbs away, like melting ice under a warming sun. Visa waivers for these workers? It screams concession. Those zones China claims, they slip from Russian grasp. Surely, some hidden pact lets Moscow reclaim them? But Putin hesitates, loath to yank the chain. Revoke SEZ perks now? Watch alliances crumble. The support he buys with borderlands vanishes in a heartbeat. Expel 2 million souls? Blaze trails of fury toward Xi. With drones whirring overhead, Chinese tech sharpening Russia's edge, angering Beijing spells doom. September reports buzzed, engineers from the East tweak sanction flyers, launching thousands monthly at distant skies. Fewer than 2,000 drones a month? Never in 2025. Pull back, and those skies go silent. Rhetorical fury rises, can Putin afford to blink? As shadows lengthen over the taiga, what hidden clause in these deals might doom the bear entirely? In the wake of conflict, a stark reality unfolds before the world. Picture a vast land, its soil soaked in the struggles of war, as two nations clash amidst hopes of sovereignty and pride. At the center of this turmoil stands Russia, with its leader holding on to delusions of victory, anticipating a swift campaign that spirals into a relentless nightmare. What if I told you, amidst this chaos, the ambition of one man could reshape entire regions? As the battle rages in Ukraine, Russian forces face staggering losses. Reports indicate that over 11,000 tanks and nearly 24,000 armored vehicles have been reduced to scrap since the beginning of the invasion. A staggering total of over 34,000 pieces of armor gone, draining the lifeblood of military strength. Each failed attempt, each mechanized unit taken down before it's even gotten a shot off, cripples the strategic advantage the Kremlin wishes to maintain. Imagine standing on the battlefield, the echoing sounds of warfare filling the air, the sharp crack of gunfire, the distant rumble of tanks, the cries of soldiers losing hope. Meanwhile, Ukraine, with its innovative resilience, rises to the occasion. They forge strategic alliances, combining their technological prowess with that of the United States, giving birth to advanced drones designed to unleash chaos upon their adversaries. On October 16, evidence of Russia's falter emerges yet again. Satellite surveillance reveals the shocking truth: their tank reserves have plummeted. From 7,342 fully operational tanks merely a decade ago, now dwindled down to a shocking 92. The ground beneath Russia's military might shakes with the weight of impending doom. The Industry Institute warns by 2026, their armored forces could face extinction. As optimistic reports deceive the hopeful, it reveals the grim reality unfolding: Ukraine's adaptive strategies are outpacing Russian advances. But here's the twist. With every setback, China and North Korea quietly jaw their claims on Russian territory. Moscow, in a desperate bid for alliances, opens its arms to foreign influence, permitting economic leeway, allowing military aid, and granting land to its supposed partners. The whisper of territorial loss competes with the fight to maintain sovereignty against Ukraine. Russia's Far East, rich in resources, is gradually slipping through Putin's fingers, traded away for ill-conceived partnerships. As North Korean workers flood into these territories, subjected to slave-like conditions, think of the irony. While Putin flounders in a sea of debt and lost lives, Kim Jong-un reaps in the shadows, pocketing substantial gains from labor that binds him even more tightly to Russia's fate. Could this be the dawn of a new era where the puppets dance on strings woven by foreign powers, leaving Putin a mere spectator in the game of geopolitical influence? The narrative continues to evolve,
raising more questions than answers. As the roar of machinery and the clash of ideologies persist, who emerges victorious in this labyrinth of shifting alliances and territories? Only time will unveil the true cost of desperation in warfare. Amid the chaos following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, a man named Vladimir Putin clung to the belief that his so-called military operation would conclude swiftly. Yet, weeks turned into months, as his hopes turned to dust. Relying on the expanse of his military might, he found himself facing a grim reality: Russia's armed forces were not enough. He turned to foreign partners, desperately seeking manpower and funds to fuel his ambitions, all while accumulating a staggering debt he never anticipated. As revealed by Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Agency, Russia's Far East is slipping gradually into the hands of Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un. But how did the tides turn in such a pivotal region? The analysis, published on October 16, sheds light on China and North Korea's calculated encroachment into territory once considered a stronghold of Russian sovereignty. To keep his military efforts alive, Putin has resorted to unprecedented measures. The article contends that, with dwindling resources, the Russian president is allegedly relinquishing control of his territory. Unable to develop the vast expanse known as the Far East and Federal District, he is now bartering land in exchange for assistance from eager allies. Each square mile given away represents Putin's desperation to cling to power while furthering the ambitions of foreign nations. Chinese investments have surged, and the figures are startling. By the end of 2025, it's estimated that these investments could soar to 1 trillion rubles, roughly translating to $12.6 billion. But can Putin really believe that such generous investments come from a place of goodwill? China's strategic maneuvering is intricate, grounded in its larger vision of global dominance. Many might be inclined to think that this investment heralds progress. However, this is merely the prelude to a cunning strategy. China's Belt and Road Initiative exemplifies a much grimmer reality, one where nations ensnared in debt yield control over their resources. And that's precisely the playbook being executed in the Russian Far East. A chilling thought: what will happen when Beijing pulls the strings, tightening its grip on an isolated and beleaguered Russia? Evidence suggests China's plan is multifaceted, extending beyond mere economic leverage. Over 2 million Chinese nationals now inhabit the stretch between the Ural Mountains and Vladivostok, working predominantly under visa-free agreements and often in specialized economic zones designed to favor them over Russians. In essence, are these regions now extensions of Chinese influence, operating with different rules altogether? If you're imagining a silent takeover, you're not far from the truth. The special economic zones, initially a symbol of potential growth, are morphing into vessels of control, indicating that Putin's grasp on his territory is slowly eroding. What happens when these zones become mini-satellites of China? As the backdrop shifts, we must also turn our attention to North Korea, steadily inserting its influence. With more than 15,000 North Koreans reportedly entering Russia's Far East last year, though estimates suggest the number could be as high as 50,000, this influx comes at dire human costs. Reports indicate that workers labor under deplorable conditions, with stories emerging of long hours, harsh treatment, and minimal compensation. But from this, what profit does Kim Jong-un reap? The figures are staggering, an estimated $500 million annually, with the potential for much more as contracts with Russian companies proliferate. As the repayment of this wartime debt weighs heavily on Putin's shoulders, he's grappling with a shocking truth: the very means of continuing his campaign is tethered to exploitative labor practices that yield wealth for others. As the tale unfolds, one question lingers: how long can Putin afford to pay the price for his ambitions before he runs out of resources, or worse, control? The stakes are rising, and a calculated game is underway. Can he reclaim his Far East, or will he relinquish more than just territory? Could this be the beginning of Russia's unraveling under the guise of Allied support? The clock is ticking, and every moment counts. In the chaos of Ukraine's front lines near Avdiivka, Russia's armored assault crumbled under relentless Ukrainian strikes, leaving tanks in smoldering ruins and soldiers fleeing on foot. Shockingly, did you know Ukraine's expert drone pilots turned Russia's own hiding spots into deadly traps, destroying 9 heavy vehicles and damaging 4 more in a single counterattack on October 16? 312 characters, Ukrainians dug in, their hearts pounding as artillery roared overhead, shaking the earth like thunderclaps from angered gods. The scent of gunpowder mixed with the metallic tang of blood in the cool October air, while the rough bark of trees scratched at exposed skin in the dense forests. Soldiers gripped their controllers, sweat beading on brows, as first-person view drones buzzed like angry wasps, swooping down on Russian targets.
Could you imagine the terror of being hunted by unseen eyes from above, your every move watched and doomed? Yet, the real twist wasn't just the destruction, it was how Russia's vaunted tanks, meant to crush defenses, became sitting ducks. Ukraine's forces, outsmarted in a humiliating turn, waited until the invaders were exposed. Instead of charging head-on, Russians slunk through thick forests, hoping for cover, but the labyrinth of trees betrayed them. Branches cracked under heavy treads, leaves whispering warnings of doom.
Was your mighty advance just a foolish crawl, one Ukrainian fighter might taunt? Their artillery lit up enemy positions first, preventing any tank or infantry fighting vehicle from nearing key points near Robotyne. This shift in tactics revealed Russia's desperation, their crews choosing speed over stealth, only to face the backlash. As drones struck tracks with tugs on joysticks feeling like pulling teeth from a beast, tanks ground to halts, smoke rising in bitter plumes. The ground trembled under explosions, dirt flying like shrapnel into faces.
For vehicles suffered crippling blows, twisted metal groaning in the inferno.
And here's the unexpected reveal, those damaged machines weren't repaired, they were abandoned, left like forgotten husks as crews bolted, preferring narrow foot escapes to wide armored coffins.
Would you abandon your fortress for the mercy of mud and mines?
Building on that devastated force, Ukraine's National Guard launched coordinated strikes to hold Volodymyrivka, another vital spot. Forests that Russians thought were shields actually masked Ukrainian ambushes, the air thick with betrayal smelled damp wood, burning rubber, and fierce sweat-soaked grip.
Drones hovered, their lenses gleaming like predatory eyes, capturing Russia's vain thrusts.
The 82nd Air Assault Brigade sealed the trap, using footage later shared to expose the humiliation.
But who could predict the depth of Russia's shame, as vehicles they relied on became trophies for Ukrainians? Civilians might ponder, could a superpower's might hinge on fleeing shadows?
Sensory nightmares haunted the field, the screech of metal meeting munitions, vibrations pulsing through boots on soil. 9 tanks and infantry fighting vehicles vanished in puffs of destruction, their armored skins pierced like weak paper.
The cliffhanger looms, once Russia's soldiers abandoned their machines, what else might they forsake in the face of such ingenious foes?
In the early days of the conflict, as Russia launched its assault on Ukraine, one man believed it would all be resolved swiftly, Vladimir Putin. He envisioned a decisive victory. Days passed, then weeks, and the reality was far more complicated. Fueled by a misguided sense of invincibility, Putin underestimated Ukraine's resolve and the tenacity of those defending their homeland. Initially, he thought the vastness of Russia's military might would secure a swift victory. But it didn't, and now he nervously looks to foreign allies to supply the soldiers, resources, and financial backing needed to stoke the fires of this enduring conflict. In a shocking twist of fate, reports from Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service highlight a critical transformation unfolding in Russia's Far East.
As Putin clings to power, he is making concessions he never anticipated.
With foreign partners gaining control, he appears to be preparing to hand over swaths of vital territory in exchange for crucial support, signaling a dramatic loss of sovereignty.
Did you know that recent intelligence indicates that China and North Korea are systematically encroaching upon Russia's Far East?
Chinese investments are projected to soar to a staggering trillion rubles, around $12.6 billion, by 2025.
Sounds lucrative, right? But this influx isn't a gift, it's a long-term strategy.
China is leveraging financial aid to knead its influence deeply into the fabric of this vast region.
As Russia believes it's striking a bargain, China's ambitions go much deeper.
Imagine it, Russia sees an immediate gain, but China is crafting a web of dependency. The Khabarovsk region is revealing a striking increase of 5.5 million tons of trade between the two, an astonishing 36% surge just in the first half of 2025. It's a strategic maneuver that gives China substantial leverage, one that could dictate terms soon.
Can Russia truly afford to lose control over such a pivotal area?
Now, venture into the dim shadows of North Korea's involvement. Reports suggest an influx of workers from the isolated nation, some estimates put the number at upwards of 50,000, being subjected to exploitative labor conditions. This shocking treatment is a strategic boon for North Korea, who siphons off substantial resources while leaving its citizens struggling for basic rights.
Can Putin count on an ally who profits from such dire conditions? Or is this relationship destined to weaken Russia further? In the background of these plights, how does Putin plan to meet the mounting costs of war?
Economic pressures compound as he attempts to fund the military endeavors in Ukraine, while simultaneously appeasing foreign benefactors. Reports reveal he may be contemplating using territory in these regions as collateral. A perilous game, indeed. If Russia loses its grip, can it ever hope to reclaim its lands? As the stakes rise for both China and North Korea, Putin's thought process grows increasingly desperate. He is entrusting territory to foreign powers in a bid for survival. What does this mean for the future of Russia? Will Putin be remembered as a leader who surrendered not only pride but land, too? The intricate tapestry of geopolitics continues to unravel, and the questions loom large. It's a delicate dance of power, allegiance, and impending loss that echoes throughout the region, shifting the balance in ways unforeseen. What lies ahead in this titanic geopolitical struggle? The answer remains shrouded in uncertainty and tension, with the world watching intently. In a world brimming with uncertainty, what happens when an empire's ambitions unravel right before its eyes? Such is the tale of Russia, tangled in a web of desperation, as Vladimir Putin faces an unexpected awakening following his overconfidence in a swift military campaign in Ukraine. The conflict that was supposed to resolve in mere days has spun into a prolonged engagement, leaving a nation cornered and relying heavily on foreign partners for survival. Putin's initial belief in the sheer power of the Russian military has crumbled. As the war drags on, the Kremlin has found itself devoting resources to maintain its presence, leading to unexpected consequences. Recent intelligence reveals a chilling transformation. Far Eastern territories are slipping into the hands of China and North Korea. Imagine the vast expanse of Russia's Far East, a land rich in resources but now a pawn in an intricate game. Reports suggest China's investment in this region could soar to a staggering $12.6 billion by 2025. But this isn't an act of charity. It's a calculated maneuver, infiltrating with financial strategies resembling those of a cunning loan shark. By entwining itself deeply in Russia's economy, China knows it can pull the strings at will, tightening its grip on these valuable lands. Meanwhile, Putin's desperation is palpable. As he promises support to his dwindling allies, a grim realization dawns on him: he is trading away not just cash, but territory. The region's very governance seems to be eroding as Chinese businesses establish themselves, implementing trade agreements that favor their needs over Russia's. Each day, the cries of Russian citizens echo beneath the weight of foreign control, a stark reminder that survival comes at a steep cost. But it isn't only China capitalizing on Russia's woes. North Korea is meticulously sending waves of workers under harsh conditions to exploit unprotected labor markets. Official numbers suggest 15,000 North Korean workers have swarmed into the Far East, though estimates indicate the true figure may be as high as 50,000. With each worker comes a lowering of standards and a rise in profits for Kim Jong-un, while Putin's power wanes. In a cruel twist of fate, the revenue from these laborers flows into the pockets of a regime bent on asserting its influence at the cost of Russia's dignity. As the tale unfolds, one must ask, will Putin ever regain control of these lost territories, or has he sealed Russia's fate as a pawn on the global stage? Each twist in turn raises the stakes, igniting a sense of urgency in a game where time is running out. Will this be the beginning of a new era for the Far East, or a fierce struggle for sovereignty? The answers lie ahead, dark and uncertain. Vladimir Putin, once confidently declaring a swift victory over Ukraine, now finds himself grappling with an unexpected reality. His bold military ambitions have crumbled, and with them, the illusion of Russia's might. As the dust settles, he discovers not victory, but the bitter taste of dependence rife with desperation. When the grandiose dreams of conquest fell apart, Putin turned to foreign allies for salvation, but it was not what he had envisioned. In a startling twist, instead of merely paying debts in rubles, he has begun giving away pieces of sacred Russian territory in the Far East. The once mighty leader now watches as Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un slip their hands into territories that embody Russia's heart and history. Imagine the cold breath of winter in Vladivostok, where oil tankers groan under the weight of economic despair. The harsh wind is not just a reminder of the weather, it echoes the chill of loss and looming foreign control. As sanctions cripple Russia's economy, the Kremlin finds itself shackled to China and India. The vision of partnership that once stood proud has been reduced to a beggar's plea, as Putin's choices alienate his nation. Picture the bitter snarls of authority fading into the bite of isolation. Fuel prices tumble, and desperate discounts become the norm. $10 billion in savings have floated to China from Russian crude oil over the last couple of years. The pungent aroma of cheap diesel hangs heavy, a scent of surrender rather than strength. Enemies watch closely, they recognize as weakness cloaked in an illusory strength. No longer is Moscow dictating terms, now it is at the mercy of those who once stood in its shadow, highlighting a grim irony.
Can you feel the tightening grip of dependence tightening around Putin's ambitions?
Reports from think tanks reveal that he has trapped himself, tying every hope to the east while essentially kneeling before China. The vision of a powerful Russia morphs into a landscape of crumbling sovereignty and increased vassalage. This isolation from the West, once a proud choice, has birthed a profound dependency, casting a suffocating shadow over the Kremlin. The irony is palpable, as he works to sustain an aging empire, those he believes are allies are quietly snatching the lifeblood from under his feet. The ticking clock of time does not favor him, each passing moment pulls him towards a future where his legacy fades into obscurity. Will he pay the price of his hubris to cling to vestiges of power? The wind howls louder, a reminder that an unwelcome dawn may never break over these frozen lands. In the early days of conflict, when Russia launched its aggressive campaign against Ukraine, Vladimir Putin was convinced of a quick resolution. He envisioned a swift and decisive victory, believing that the sheer might of Russia's military would overpower any resistance. Days turned into weeks, and the anticipated triumph never came. Rather, Putin found himself faced with an unwavering determination from Ukraine and its defenders, a fight far more arduous than he had imagined. Now, as the war drags on, the weight of his miscalculations bears down on him. With resources dwindling, he turns to foreign allies for soldiers, support, and vital financial backing. But in a shocking turn of events, reports from Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service outline a profound transformation occurring in the far east of Russia. Putin, desperately trying to hold on to power, is making concessions that he once would have deemed unacceptable. The very territory he commands is slipping from his grasp as he trades land for much-needed support. Did you know that intelligence suggests an alarming trend? China and North Korea are slowly tightening their grip on Russia's Far East. Projections indicate that Chinese investments in this region could skyrocket to an astounding trillion rubles, approximately $12.6 billion, by 2025. What might seem like a financial boon to Russia is, in fact, a calculated strategy by China to extend its influence deep into Russian territory. Picture this: while Russia revels in apparent investment gains, China is crafting a dependency that will serve its interests in the long run. The Khabarovsk region alone has seen an incredible increase in trade, 5.5 million tons more in just 1 year. This trend, which surged by 36% in the first half of 2025, hints at China's burgeoning power in the area. Can Russia truly afford to cede control of such a strategic region without dire repercussions? But the tale doesn't end there. Shadows loom over North Korea's role as well. Reports suggest that around 50,000 North Korean workers are entering Russia under grim conditions, working as near-slave labor. The plight of these individuals highlights a chilling reality: North Korea is profiting handsomely while its workers suffer. Can Putin rely on a partner that thrives in such conditions, or is this alliance set to further undermine Russia's strength? Amidst these troubling dynamics, how does Putin plan to cover the escalating costs of his military ventures? With pressure mounting from multiple fronts, he seems to contemplate using valuable territory as collateral for financial support. It's a dangerous gamble, as the potential loss of land raises grave questions. If Russia relinquishes control, will it ever regain its territories? As desperation seeps into Putin's decision-making, he risks handing over crucial regions to foreign powers for temporary reprieve. What does this imply for Russia's future? Will history remember Putin as a leader who not only lost his pride but also sovereign lands? The geopolitical landscape is in flux, and the stakes could not be higher. What awaits on this complex chessboard of power, loyalty, and potential loss is still unclear. The world watches with bated breath, as each strategic move reverberates across nations. In this high-stakes game of geopolitics, the balance of power remains precariously poised. What twists and turns lie ahead in this unfolding story? The uncertainty looms large, echoing through the corridors of power and into the hearts of people far and wide. In a world marred by conflict, a disturbing truth unfurls. A vast expanse of land lies drenched in the effects of war, where two nations grapple for sovereignty and pride. At the heart of this chaos stands Russia, its leader clinging to the illusion of a swift victory that has devolved into an unending nightmare. What if I told you that the unbridled ambition of one individual could reshape entire landscapes?
Amidst the relentless battle in Ukraine, Russian forces suffer staggering losses.
Reports reveal a catastrophic toll. Over 11,000 tanks and nearly 24,000 armored vehicles have met their demise since the invasion commenced. In total, more than 34,000 pieces of military might have been reduced to remnants.
Each failure inflicts further blows to the Kremlin's ambitions, with mechanized units being neutralized before they can even engage.
Imagine standing amidst this battlefield, the deafening cacophony of warfare filling the air, the sharp crack of gunfire, the rumble of tanks, and the anguished cries of soldiers disillusioned by despair. Yet, Ukraine refuses to yield, rising phoenix-like from the ashes through inventive resilience. They forge alliances, blending their technological edge with that of the United States, and out of this partnership emerges advanced drones that rain chaos on their adversaries. On October 16, a grim revelation cast shadows on Russia's strategies.
Satellite reconnaissance unveiled an alarming decline in tank reserves.
From a robust 7,342 operational tanks just a decade ago, the figure has plummeted to an astonishing 92. The ground beneath Russia trembles,
hinting at an impending collapse.
Analysts predict that by 2026, Moscow's armored divisions could face near extinction. The disheartening reports hide the stark reality: a relentless speed at which Ukraine adapts shapes the future narrative.
But here lies the twist. In Russia's time of weakness, a quiet invasion unfolds.
China and North Korea make their moves, each quietly seizing opportunities in the shadow of conflict. Amidst a panic-stricken quest for alliances, Russia opens its doors wider to foreign influence, trading economic concessions, military assistance, and even land for support. The chilling thought of territorial loss intertwines with the struggle to uphold sovereignty against Ukraine. Slowly yet surely, the resource-rich expanse of Russia's Far East slips through Putin's grasp, bartered away for fragile partnerships.
As North Korean workers migrate into these regions, enduring appalling working conditions, a dark irony emerges.
While Putin flounders amid a sea of debt and despair, Kim Jong-un thrives unnoticed, pocketing immense profits from laborers that tether him closer to the uncertain fate of Russia.
Could this herald a new age where foreign powers pull the strings, reducing Putin to a mere spectator in this game of geopolitical chess?
The story evolves further, provoking more questions than answers.
As the machinery roars and ideologies collide, who stands to claim victory in this maze of shifting alliances and territories? Only time will illuminate the true toll of desperation in warfare.